This is another episode of Summoning Insight. We have returned. And for this one, I think what we'll do on this one is like, there's so many other things we can do in esports. So I think we just start with the industry stuff first and then we go to the games because everyone knows we're going to talk about the games anyway. Don't worry, we're going to go into all of it, the FlyQuest and GenG and the fact that all the LPL
coming,
teams,
baby.
some of them were better than you thought, guys, and everyone did use the Swiss system like a pleb, even though I don't do it, to think that the form of Swiss must carry over into the best of fives. I've told everyone a million times, but you never learn. It's all good. So we'll rewind all the way back, though. But here's what's brilliant, Monty. There actually isn't, especially because I had that event, so I never got that certain video done, but don't worry. What's great is this is where life, I know everything is conspiring to make me eventually release that video. The reason why I know, Monty, the certain video I promised, is because that character himself, even when he sort of got a reprieve unknowingly to him, went out of his way to be like rude about people he'd worked with. So I'm definitely just going to clap this fucker. Don't even worry about that. But anyway, you wouldn't think during Worlds there'd be any drama. But actually, that's one area I want to start with, Monty, which is, bro, am I the only one who thinks it's mad inappropriate that like all of Worlds is like a drama off season before the off season starts now? Like, you know, it did happen.
I was told that we couldn't be tampering with players and we couldn't be signing contracts during these time periods. It's wacky that there could be this much drama going on.
Like, I get the idea there could be, like, people where, you know, like, someone's, like, inquiring about an ERL player, like, when the off-season begins. But essentially, the teams that just aren't in the playoffs have, like, basically already begun the off-season, it seems like, which just, even though it's not a big deal, it just feel like it does take away from Worlds a little bit. Because every day that isn't Worlds is just people discussing, like the joke is what G2 is going to be like next year. It's like, well, I'm waiting till off-season for that. It's a bit wild, isn't it?
I like how that started literally the instant that they got eliminated from Swiss stage as well. It's like, all right, well, goodbye, Mickey and Yike, I guess. We're going to reset that. And here we go. We're just going to get a rookie jungler in Labrov. And that's just totally fine. And now, of course, all the tweets are going out, too, about everybody is now open to discuss opportunities, which, by the way, when you are open to discuss opportunities, it means you are no longer on that team. So Noah, our favorite AD carry, he's tweeting about that now. Fnatic, he apparently wants to get off of Fnatic, and honestly, who can blame him? He may have been a big part of the problem, but he wasn't a problem at Worlds. I will say that. I thought his Worlds performance overall was very good. He may have been the best performing player on a badly performing Fnatic. So, but before we go into that, Thorin, we have our usual Riot Games shenanigans. Exactly. And what happened this time?
I imagine also updating this while Worlds is going on. You know what I mean? Like, give us a break.
So, Thorin, I'm gonna drop some pretty big information on this show about what Riot's working on, because I'm just tired of their nonsense. So, good morning, Riot Games. You'll be seeing this. Have fun wasting a bunch of time talking to each other about what I'm about to say. So, Tryndamere, aka Mark Merrill, founder of Riot, former president, currently chief product officer. You see, he had to go into hiding for a little bit there after the the company culture that he was responsible for created $100 million civil lawsuits that they had to pay for, I don't know, mistreating every woman who has ever worked at the company Riot Games. So they had to disappear him for a little bit, but he's back, Thorin. Was he fired?
Remember, guys,
no.
In case you have a hard time separate, like Brandon Beck and Mark Merrill. Mark Merrill is the one who tried to say that by watching like OPGG sourced games of Faker in solo queue, we were like cyber bullying and harassing him or something. That he was the Expectate Faker one, if you remember, guys.
Yeah,
that was the glorious one I was associated with him.
He's also the guy who said, "Love me some Reggie," and then spewed a bunch of nonsense that made you wonder whether he even understood the basic principles of business.
But we'll say, Monty, I won't lie, he is my favorite Rioter, though, in the same way as, put it this way, when it's not like Nicola Nyholm in Counter-Strike doing evil shit, it's just like a random generic suit. It's not as fun. You want it to be, because here's what I like about these guys, Monty. These guys are more like the sort of like 80s corporate douchebag, like that would be like in the like RoboCop or something, like the leader of the police or whatever. They're like that douchebag. You know, that guy, he's charismatically evil. That's what I like about Mark Merrill, because he always has to put his own little flair on it, That's what I like.
So yeah, he was the one who like invented the Riot culture, put all the weird cult stuff in there. So he's been running around telling Dom that he's lucky that he made a free game for Dom to make money from.
That's fire.
Guys can't help himself ever. He is just a cartoon character.
He's pretty bad at PR as well, which is going to be relevant here.
So what's so interesting about this, and I will say maybe this is in the purview of his job as chief product officer, because he is talking about the product of League of Legends. All right. But there's some weird discrepancies, because you'll notice that Riot just like doesn't have some sort of centralized communication structure, which we've criticized in the past. A lot of this comes out on people's personal Twitter accounts for I have no idea what fucking reason, or it's like a rioter posting on Reddit, which we will get into today because we have to just kind of untangle everything that's going on with League of Legends. And so what's weird is to start out with that the big layoffs that happened earlier this year, guys, and I'm sure you remember what happened with that. So they did this massive layoff, right? And in this massive layoff, which was by the new CEO, right? The former chief financial officer, CFO, that they have turned, they waved the magic wand and made him the CEO. When they laid off 500 people earlier this year, the message was posted on the Riot Games website, and it said the following: as CEO, I'm accountable for the changes we're making and where we're headed in the future. So I think it's important for me to share how we got here and how the next few days will work. So he is saying he is responsible for layoffs at the company and delivering this message, and they're doing it on the official Riot Games website from the CEO, the new CEO of the company. Okay. But this round of layoffs in the same year, which is far fewer and deals only with League of Legends, it was posted on Tryndamere personal Twitter only. And it is titled, which I thought, oh, are they going to announce some of the stuff that I'll just announce for them? An update on how we're evolving League. And you think to yourself, well, what are they doing? Are they changing things that, are they making big improvements to the game that brought them such success? And he says, I want to share some important updates about League of Legends PC. We've made changes to our teams and how we work to make sure we can keep improving the League experience now and for the long term. But I want to be clear, we're not slowing down work on the game you love. We're investing heavily in solving today's challenges faster while also building for the future.
By the way, that's going to be a detail. I'm going to prep people for this whole thing. The detail you want to listen to here is the way he frames it all, because essentially, I've always given this famous example. If you don't know the book 1984, guys, the main character in it works for the Ministry of Truth, which is like editing reality, essentially, based on what like information you are told in newspapers and clippings and stuff. And so there's a famous scene where, to show how like a totalitarian government would like trick you to never think anything's bad, they actually reduce chocolate rations from like 30 grams to 20 grams. So they just rewrite history that it was never 30 grams. And they go, and they all have to say, like, the emperor's got no clothes. Like, oh, double plus good. Chocolate's gone up to 20 grams. Isn't that brilliant? Even though anyone who obviously can remember would know, no, it's gone down, but you can't say that. So if you notice, Monty, the way this is all framed is like we're evolvingly, because, by the way, a trick about the modern days, everyone always hears the word evolve and think it gets better, doesn't it? They don't understand it could be getting worse. Similarly, later on, he says, which is like this framing it for you when you get to it. He goes, this isn't about reducing head count to save money, which is, so he's basically saying, I'm firing a bunch of people. And then bizarrely, he can't just go like we'd expect. Maybe they're having problems, Monty. Maybe there's issues. Maybe this project didn't work and they just want to reduce costs and go. So they go, no. I'm not doing that to save money though, because it didn't work. I'm doing that because I'm going to make it better and with more. So he's going, basically less is more is the whole mental concept of this. So go and hit me with it, because this whole thing has to be some sort of like charade, right? It sounds like they're just hiding something here. Come on.
Well, yeah, exactly. Like, I'm thinking, well, maybe, as the chief product officer, he's making a really big announcement about the product. But if he was doing that, why would he be doing it as on Twitter? It's almost like he's trying to hide the information that he's going to say.
Well, this is like just all to obscure what he's trying to say, isn't it? It's very unclear what he is. Even though he says, I want to be clear, he's very unclear, believe it or not, want to be. Intentionally so.
As part of these changes, we've made the tough decision to eliminate some roles. There it is, guys. This isn't about reducing headcount to save money. Oh, what? It's about making...
It's a bit weird to just bring that up out of nowhere, isn't it? I know, like, what?
It's about making sure we have the right expertise so that League continues to be great for another 15 years and beyond. Which, I mean, there's so much working in that sentence. The assumption that League is going to last another 15 years is just kind of ridiculous in and of itself. Like, they would have to commit to seriously upgrading the game and hoping that the MOBA genre doesn't die, which is far from a guaranteed thing, I would
he's
say.
talking about 2039. Like and then he even has the audacity to go, and beyond. League of Legends. Listen, if they do it, I can't lie. If we're here in 20 years, fair play. They've got us on that one. But I feel like it's going to be gone, bro. You know what I mean? That's a reach, isn't it?
While team effectiveness is more important than team size, the league team will eventually be even larger than it is today as we develop the next phase of league. For rioters who are laid off, we're supporting them with a severance package that includes a minimum of 6 months' pay, annual bonus, job placement assistance, health coverage, and more. Very generous, by the way, Riot. That is very generous for laying people off.
Okay. They probably don't legally have to do that, right?
No. We have full confidence in Riot Medler. And by the way, Riot Medler is the current director of everything League of Legends everything League of Legends. He's the head of League Studio, which means League of Legends, Teamfight Tactics, Wild Rift. So anything with the League of Legends branding that's a video game, I believe he is in charge of. And Riot Pabro. And Riot Pabro is the executive producer of League of Legends, just so we get everybody clear here, because our dear friend Riot Medler is going to come up again in a few minutes. And the League leadership team, who are leading the charge in this next phase of League's journey. And we look forward to sharing more about our ambitious plans in the future. Thank you all for playing and for being part of the League community. Mark. So basically, it's an extremely weird way to announce layoffs, but while also saying that they are planning this very vague next phase and their ambitions to keep a singular game going, because you might say, well, Counter-Strike's still around, and Counter-Strike's been around for over 20 years. Yeah, there's been a bunch of different versions of Counter-Strike, guys. Oh. Also, the FPS genre hasn't died. Have you guys seen any big RTSs lately? Because I haven't seen those, and I would love to see a big RTS lately. So you guys let me know when those come back. It's not a guarantee that a genre is going to stay around forever, and League's longevity has been legitimately impressive, but it's hard to believe that we are currently at the peak of players. Meanwhile, even late in CSGO's time, they were reaching new peaks of players. Oh, sure. And, you know, that was actually a big factor with Counter-Strike, is like the longer the game went on, like, you know, the user base was kind of going up. Obviously, with the release of Counter-Strike 2, that continued as a trend following the release, at least, even if it has gone down since then. But these things have kind of fluctuated. At least in terms of Counter-Strike. But even games that are still played, like StarCraft Brood War, which is from the kind of original Counter-Strike era, it's significantly smaller than it used to be. I mean, I started casting in Warcraft 3, and sure, there are Warcraft 3 tournaments in China, but that's like it, basically. You know, some of the Korean pros are still playing, some of the Chinese pros are still playing, but, you know, it's floated by a majority Asian audience, and it's significantly smaller than it was in like the mid-2000s. So the presumption that League of Legends is going to be here is pretty crazy. And I think you can just read into this, Thorin, and say, well, if they're talking about the next phase of League of Legends, then clearly they are talking about pretty major upgrades to the game. That makes sense, right? But you always run into the intractable problem with League of Legends, which is, how do you get new players in a game that has 170 different champions in it? Because the learning curve is absolutely insane.
The joke is, Monty, I'll tie this in foreshadow when we talk about the FlyQuest series, because the joke is, one of the things FlyQuest actually did use at this Worlds as their hidden tech was just champions people don't play. It really was like no and stupid shit, even like fiddlesticks. It was just about like the fact that like if some modern day Korean pro never played against Nunu, they might not know what it does. Like, that's real. So the joke is that even can affect pro play. That the best team in the world's like, well, I guess Han was like third best or whatever. Like the top 3 teams in the world can get affected by that. So
yeah,
you're right. If a pro doesn't know the champion, how is the casual fan going to know if you buff some shit from like 8 years ago? They're going to have no frame of reference for what the champion does. You're right. It's gone too far on it.
Yeah, it's gone too far. So, I mean, maybe, I mean,
especially 15 years, how many more champions are you going to have? Like 150 more? Like, it's going to be infinite, mate.
There are real questions, like Wild Rift has fewer champions in it. Do they have to pare down the number of champions? But then, of course, what happens to people's skins and like what happens to the user base? Sure. You know, if you have players that like
that's also the concern, Monty. In CS, they were smart enough to make it that your skins went to CS too, because that was the big fear of why people didn't want there to be a sequel, because people put their whole life. Remember, like the whole trading side of skins in CS, like a whole other thing, mate. There's people's whole streams that dedicated to that. So I agree with you. If people, especially like just bought the Faker Chrome, imagine imagine finding out in 2 years, being like, League is shutting down now. We are going to a new game without your chromas. Like, what? I just spent $500 on that. Yeah, exactly.
So, they would either have to reimburse people. And even if you reimburse people, I think the problem is, and what Smite did when they moved to Smite 2 was they say like, hey, we can't port your skins, but in Smite 2, you're going to get in-game credits, returned to you for those skins. So they're not like giving you your money back, but they're providing you with in-game resources to purchase new skins in the new game. I don't think Riot's going to do that. But I do think the problem is like, even if they were to do that, but they were to pare down the number of champions within the game, you run into the problem that a lot of people like are one tricks, and there's like, oh, my favorite champion isn't here anymore, I'm done playing this game, right? And the question becomes, is the potential loss of players, does that outweigh the number of new players who would possibly come in? Because as I've said on this show before, I have been involved with high school esports. I can tell you guys, at least in America, there is nobody playing League of Legends in high school. Nobody. Like, it is hard for schools that have 3,000-4,000 students to scrape together 5 players of any rank, including Iron, to get a team together.
Here's my joke, Monty. Here's actually a way that I'll use something positive that did come out about League recently to show you that League's in a bit of a bad spot, mate. A feature that came out the other day for League of Legends is that the famous Korean football player, Heung-min Son, who plays for Tottenham Hotspur, because he's Korean, obviously like the stereotype, he plays League. Yeah, guys, because he's probably like 28 years old. Like, that's unfortunate. It's a generational thing. It's not even just that he's Korean. It's that he just came from the generation that when the joke is when this show would have started, he would have been like 14 or something stupid, wouldn't he? Like, it would be something like that, wouldn't it? I'll have a look how old is he now. Because that's the downside. He is 32 years old, Monty. So that's the downside, right? It's not like, wow, a 32-man players league. It's like he was
22 when like Faker won his first Worlds, guys.
Exactly.
He was like 21.
Yes.
Like, he was playing League with everybody else in Korea at that time period. And we've heard Arnold
the 12-year-old now, or the 18-year-old now wouldn't be playing it probably.
Arnold Hur has been very public, the CEO of GenG, saying that he doesn't think there are enough like really amateur players, young players coming into the scene. It's like, basically the academy system's okay, but he's worried about the kind of the level of like 13, 14, 15-year-olds coming in, because a lot of those kids are playing Valorant or other games these days, and they're not actually playing League of Legends anymore, even in Korea. Now, I have no idea what the situation is in China, but we're getting away from the point. Like, the point of this is I think it's ambitious given the barriers to entry in League of Legends, and especially when we talk about it in North America or in the West, that we're going to see an influx of a massive number of young new players, because League is not viewed very well by young people, at least in America, that I'm aware of today. Like, those kids are not playing League of Legends. Like, they're playing Valorant, they're playing Call of Duty, they're playing Minecraft, Bed Wars, they're playing Fortnite. They're playing Rocket League, they're playing Smash. They're not really playing MOBAs at all. Not any MOBA. So I think that there are some big issues that Riot needs to get over, and simply like updating the game to modern standards, I think, doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get this massive influx of new players. So I think that's going to be one of the major hurdles that they're facing. But you might ask yourself, who did they lay off? And apparently, some press reached out. They said they laid off 27 people, which of course is only about 5% of the number of people that they laid off earlier in the year, right, within the past year. So it's a pretty minor layoff, but many of these people were artists, including the artist that made the Faker Ari $500 skin, which I think is funny. The artist responsible, I think, for the Lee Sin visual update.
You know the one that Riot is, they're like, hey, feel free to take 3 extra Faker skins with you on the way out. I love how cynical these fucks are. You've already made the first of those epic skins. You're already done. What? Because by the way, that also doesn't make sense, Monty. Remember what he said in his tweet? He said it's not about reducing the size of the team for monetary reasons. It's about the idea you need to go in a different direction. Well, that doesn't make sense, Monty, because the new direction is those skins. So logically, you do actually want to get rid of that guy, and you don't think he's good at his job. By the way, what are they actually hiding with this? Like, is there a sinister reason? Like, do you think they have just had a budget slashed in game dev or something, or balance or something?
They were also laying off some of the designers who did like their unique game modes, like Swarm and this kind of stuff that people seem to really like. So, but I can just tell you guys, because spoiler to you, Riot, People actually there are a lot of people out there who really don't like your management team who work for you. And they're pretty mad at you, Riot Games.
If you keep doing projects and cancelling them and people like halfway into their life on something, that's going to be outrageous, mate. Yeah. Think about how many things now, at this point in time, ironically, we could do a show where we just show Riot, like announce something huge, then 2 or 3 years later, just cancel it. And it never ever comes out or never gets done.
And there are also a lot of people who don't like your weird ass cult that you force people to participate in. So what I will say is this, is that there were other promises that were being made, guys, that are pretty famous at this point in time. So the director of League of Legends, which is a guy named Pu Liu, right? He goes by Riot Poo Poo Lasers, or Pew Pew Lasers. He said in a tweet in December of last year that everybody was like raising their eyebrows at, 2024 will have something for everyone. 2025 will change League forever.
Yeah, unemployment in certain cases.
It will. Yeah, it'll change our employees' lives forever.
What an insane set of generic political statements. Next year, we'll have something for everyone. And the year after that, we'll have, what was the other one? What was the second one we'll have?
2025 will change League forever.
These are just like generic things on a movie poster or something. This is personal. This will change everything. Nothing will be the same after 2026. Like, it's just vague. It doesn't mean anything. You can't be pinned down on it. It means nothing.
So then a couple months ago, Riot started to release some dev blogs and dev updates across a variety of different things. You guys may have seen these YouTube videos. One of them contains Riot Medler, again, the director of every League intellectual property in video games. And then, of course, Thorin, because this is how it works, he comments on Reddit. Riot Medler comments on Reddit, and he says this in the video in which he is in, because people are like, man, this doesn't contain the, like, it's going to change League forever, because they were doing previews of stuff that's coming in the next year. And he says this: we've got some cool stuff coming in 2025, and we'll share more about it later this year. Having said that, I think change League forever is a bit of an oversell. I'm really glad Riot Pew Pew Lasers is super excited about things being worked on. We're not redefining what LoL means, upgrading everything at once, or anything at that sort of level.
Why can't we signal each other? Can't we just have a coherent, unified message? No. What are we doing?
So, and I will tell you what this guy means and what I think Mark Merrill means. So the reason why they were saying that League of Legends is going to change everything forever in 2025 is because Riot was planning at one point in time to update the engine for the game and the client.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so they were because Wild Rift has a much better engine, even though it's on mobile. People are very excited about that. So this got to the point, by the way, Thorin, that they were actually showing demos to Riot employees at a pretty broad scale within the company. So people know now. It was not a full version of the game running on the engine, but they were starting to show these demos. They were telling people internally that they were updating the engine. They were telling people that they were updating the client. And I think that either they no longer have these plans, or these plans were so complicated to recreate the engine for the game on PC that they are having issues that are not going to be resolved by the time that's 2025. So I think this will also clear up basically what Mark Merrill is saying, which is that they're trying to, expand the team to get League of Legends into the next phase, because this is their intention. And I think they thought at the end of last year that they were closer to achieving this goal than they actually were. And I think either technical abilities or a lack of staff may have slowed this down. It's also possible that this
to actually make the engine, you think?
Well, I mean, to replace the entire engine of the game is an enormous amount of work, especially because the code is garbage that underlies League of Legends. So, to make sure that everything is working properly is an enormous lift.
I can also tell you as well, the hard thing people won't realize is you can't port half this shit. You have to recreate the game mechanics, etc., for some of the champions and stuff. Because I know those are things in versions of Counter-Strike that have been issues when they've ported over. It's you can get it quite close, but if people don't know, in CS2, they only just now got some of the things of how the model looks the same. same when it comes on the corner and stuff like. So I can't imagine with all the different mechanics in the game how specific. And think of all the interactions as well, Monty, like things that work off each other and stuff like. Like, by the way, as a random example, guys, we'll talk about it later. Like, remember in that like fucking BLG Hand of Life series where you had like the dual Galio ults in because of the side? That'd be like really hard to make all that shit look the same, bro. It's gonna be super complicated in League. There's a million interactions.
And the game feeling the same is obviously like super
Sure.
important as well. I think it's important that they already have Wild Rift to kind of lean on, but you know, the scale of the PC version is obviously significantly larger. So Riot did have plans to do that, may still have plans to do that, but there's also the possibility, Thorin, that they just canceled the project because, like I said, I'm not sure that if you did a cost benefit analysis of League of Legends, if you spend, you know, potentially hundreds of millions of dollars updating the game for the next 15 years, are you going to make that money back, right? Are there going to be enough new players coming into the game if we aren't sure if the MOBA genre is even going to be relevant in that amount of time, right? So like it's possible they just walked it all back because replacing the engine would be too difficult or too expensive or both. But they definitely were, you know, parading this around internally, and they definitely, I think, did intend to release it in 2025, and now they are basically lying about what other people said and saying like, haha, it wasn't ever that big of a deal. And now here's
Monty. This is like some esports succession shit where it's like within their company, there's obviously like different agendas and different groups. Like, for example, Monty, if you look at the last few years, it feels like the people who got the ascendancy within Riot are actually the Valorant people. Like, if anything, I imagine there's people in the company who are like, why do we stick with League? Like you say, maybe we've tapped it out. Essentially, maybe we've mined this mine already, and there's no scene, there's no point bringing in a new machine.
Place to put the
Why
money.
don't we pivot to the FPS game we've got? And then remember, the last 5 years was actually never about saying you were going to fix League. It was about saying we're making other games. We're going to make a fighting game and a fucking all the games. Yeah, exactly. RTS, everything.
I mean, they canceled a bunch of their projects though. Like we've never really heard about there ever since there was an announcement about it years ago. There's never been a follow up on the action. The like Diablo style game that they were making.
Remember those names, so you know how like there was like the Valorant
Project
was one,
F,
it's like Project A and
one.
Project L or whatever. You know what the joke is? League of Legends Project L.
So they haven't seen any updates on that. They canceled kind of their indie studio project where they were giving out their IP to and helping, you know, with development assistance, I believe, with some of these indie studios to make games. They just can't Riot Forge. They just killed it.
Is why don't you know they say, Monty, if you're a writer or like a songwriter, they say you're supposed to write what you know. Why didn't they just make a Japanese visual novel where you're a programmer who goes to work at Riot Games, but it's one of those harem visual novels where every woman you meet you can choose to hit on her or just collaborate with her and just do your job, and you have to navigate the heady world of politics if you start dating the women because that's really inappropriate. And at the end of the game, if you fuck up, the whole company gets fined $100 million. I think I'm just going with a great idea for a visual novel there, guys. Hit me up if there's a coder out there. We can get this game made.
And the game over is actually you just leave your post as president and then get disappeared for a few months and then you just resurface as chief product officer / co-founder.
That's the sequel. The sequel, you come back and it's like, right, the first game was something for everyone. Next game changes everything. And then you did League 2.
So there you guys go. And I wasn't going to talk about this, but like, frankly, fuck everybody involved in this like bait and switch that they're doing publicly. Like, I'm just tired of this nonsense, and I'm tired of them just like promising things and then taking it back and saying like, haha, that guy was just really excited. It's not actually going to be, it will not actually change League forever. And then Mark Merrill posting on his fucking personal Twitter account about laying off employees. And then all of a sudden saying like, oh, but don't worry guys, the next phase is going to be super cool. So there you go. New engine, new client. Will it actually happen? Who the fuck knows? Is it just like the MMO doomed to purgatory forever? Who knows? But it definitely was the plan. It was the plan at one point in time. They were showing it to people, and that's what's going on within Riot Games. So if you've been confused by all of the conflicting messages that they've been putting out there, hopefully that will illuminate you. That'll illuminate you. So yeah, that was our very fun little detour through the wonderful and complex Byzantine world of Riot Games. We probably should talk about some of these potential roster changes that are coming up, and then we'll get into quarterfinal breakdowns between all of the teams.
By the way, Monty, here's one thing I want to say, which goes like this. This is where you know European League of Legends is its own bubble, and some people have never left this bubble because, bro, they live in another reality. You know where we're talking about the fact? Think about the other major regions, Monty. Okay, the LPL is still very healthy. They have like a fantastic talent pipeline, loads of top players, obviously. But as you say, even top squads like GenG have complained that in Korea there isn't like the next crop of like super talents coming through. They're sort of stuck with this set of talents, and obviously in NA, I mean, the joke I'm going to make later is, yes, what a great accomplishment for NA, FlyQuest succeeding is. The whole fucking team's full of Europeans and it's got a Korean mid laner, for fuck's sake. But we'll walk that back. How could Europe be the only region, Monty, where, you know, when you hear these roster moves, you don't even just get the normal hype, bro. It's not like, oh, this guy's good. You have what I call narrative whiplash, which is that there's two opinions and they can't both be true at the same time, but the same person gives them. So I'll give you an example, Monty. When the story first came out, that was like, G2's willing to give up Yike and Mickey X. Every single account, Monty, in League, in Europe, went, that it's impossible to upgrade Yike. He's already the best you could get. Then, like 3 days later, this story came out about the Skewmond guy is going to replace him. And everyone was like, good. He's the next greatest player to ever play jungle ever in the history of League. And you're like, what? Bro, 1 second ago, you wouldn't even have let me put like Yankos or like Razork over Yike. But now a guy who's never played LEC is already just goated out of his mind. Same thing again. You're supposed to believe that there's not that many talents coming through or for other squads. Then there's that story that goes, G2 was willing to trade Yike, Hansama, and Mickey X just to sniff Callist's fart as he goes to KC. But KC said no because he is the GOAT. So now I'm supposed to believe this Callist guy never ever played a game in LEC. He's already, Monty, like better than Faker in season 3. He's actually literally the Lisan Al Gaib. He's just going to enter the league and just the whole game will transcend. I guess we'll win worlds or something. Bro, we're going way too hard on this. Like, even if they're super talents, this can't make sense as a transfer market. These players can't really be the most valuable in the whole of the European League. What are we doing here? This is crazy.
I think what we learned after that is that G2 was obviously trying to get rid of Yike and Mickey X, and I think they're on very big contracts. And the problem is that under the German labor law, they have to keep paying them. They can't just cancel their contracts. Yes. So when they offer those players plus Hansama plus a cash payment, you know, it's probably not enough to cover Mickey X and you know, Yike's contracts. Because
also,
otherwise,
it's probably implied
why would they give them to them?
This is why I've heard Humanoid could never be moved from Fnatic, because obviously while the contract's active, you have to take on his contract. It's like American sports, if you think about it, guys. So the problem is, in this scenario, it's not that you don't want Yike, for example, but maybe you want a different jungler and you don't want to pay as much as you pay Yike, because obviously we've done esports winter, haven't we? So the downside is, that's also, by the way, why people don't just say yes. Because, by the way, on paper, that story made no sense, did it? Like, of course you'd trade the Callist guy for like 3 of the best players in Europe. Like, you'd be a fool not to. But in this analogy, actually, maybe you wouldn't if those 3 contracts are fucking huge. Maybe that would tank your whole salary. I mean, there's no fucking actual like limit on League, but the money budget's a limit. That's a limit right there for KC.
Yeah, and so like you know, KC, despite their popularity, was very budget strapped in the last year.
Sure,
like they were not splashing out by any means. And so for them, like obviously G2 is not going to pay the full the transfer payment for Kalista. The payment that they were offering with this was not going to be the full value of like the contracts for Mickey X and for Yike, because otherwise they would just keep them on the bench and not let other teams have potentially dangerous players to them, right? That's the G2 way. So they were trying to offload what are most likely very expensive contracts to save themselves some money. So really at the end of the day, now that we know that they've been just fully released, basically, and are now out there, you know, hunting for other teams, they would have to sign a new deal with that team, which like obviously isn't guaranteed, because if you are Yike or Mickey X and you can make more money just by sitting there, maybe you choose to do that instead of playing. Like if your new contract is worth 1/3 of your current contract, I don't think it's financially responsible, given the short period in their lives that they have to make like this life-changing money, to go ahead and sign that new deal, even if they do want to, you know, even if
especially
they do want to
because we have had the precedent set by the Alfaris of the self-mades of the world that you can, because of the German labor laws, you can just sit there and get like half the ground shot, etc. Monty, there's a reason why there's been good talents that have sat there and haven't gone to ERL teams, because they realised I'd actually be better off just collecting like a large amount of money for a year than just try next year, get a new team when the contract runs. Yeah,
So
that's kind of the meta.
yeah, I do understand. And also, for those of you who are wondering, well, okay, so I don't think the deal was that good that's been presented by G2. And like, obviously now KC is just free to, if they wanted to, make contract passes at Yike and Mickey X. But I think for Callista, it's not that he is necessarily like, I mean, people view him as a very good player, but you're right. I mean, the price to get him seems incredibly steep. But I think for KC, it's more about the fact that he's French. It's more about the fact that he's, been an amateur player in this org. And it's not necessarily that getting him onto KC is the most rational decision in the face of buyouts or trading for Hansama, who's also French, so it's like, you still get that going for you if you're KC. I think it's because the KC fan base has an attachment to him. And this just goes to show that LEC, and especially teams like MDK and Carmine Corp, who have these fan bases behind them based off of the streaming personalities, are not really seriously competitive teams, because they will do things that are not in their best competitive interest necessarily in order to get the right players on their team for their fan base, right? And that's not going to do LEC any favors when it comes to competing internationally. Even if KC, I do think, leveled up pretty significantly throughout the year, their weird-ass loyalty actually hindered them from potentially making Worlds, because obviously they should have made some of these decisions sooner. Obviously MDK should have made a mid lane swap out sooner, but these GMs are very slow because there are personal connections between, Kameto and Ibai and the players on their teams. And like the fans have this emotional connection that does not allow them to make the proper roster moves.
By the way, is there any specific move you want to talk about? Like, I actually do think, by the way, the Jojo to Mad Lions one looks great. That actually looks great for both parties.
Sure.
It's really
I mean, for
interesting
Scout,
move.
he's terrible. So like literally anything is an upgrade. And I'm excited. What's interesting, Thorin,
I think him and El Yoyo could be fire as well, though. It looks really interesting to me.
He's going to be the first North American import to LEC ever, which is actually wild when you think that this was formed over at the LCS. NA and EU LCS were formed over a decade ago. And yes, Destiny, who is Australian, played in both, obviously. You could say that there have been players that have played in the second tier leagues, right? Same thing with Korea. There's never been an import player.
Sure. Yeah,
but Reckless is like there, right? But he's not in LCK, guys. Like there has never been. Yamada pointed out in Power Spike, obviously, that there has been a coach. He coached Live Sandbox, but he's the only person who has really been there outside of Korea at that level. Not even Chinese players, have come over and played in the league. And so when we look at these kind of moves like Jojo, it's very exciting. It does give you like the what if question. Obviously we've asked in the 10 years that this show has been going on, why doesn't Doublelift go to Europe? Because I think he probably would have had a more successful competitive career, but he never made that decision.
There was a few, especially if you notice, we tended to pick the spicier ones, the people who might have had issues with the sort of vibe in the reviews in NA,
Right. And obviously Bjergsen is not NA, but he probably could have been better served by spending a good chunk of his career back in LEC. So a lot of the most iconic American players would have likely had more success playing in the EU LCS or LEC, because those teams did significantly better at international tournaments for the majority of League of Legends lifespan. So it is interesting that JoJo's going over there. I think it's a mistake from Team Liquid probably to let him go, because I think he would thrive in that more rigid structure and have a better, more robust coaching staff like he had at EG, as opposed to just like one dude on Cloud9 attempting to coach him. And I think that he's a natural fit for that roster. And I don't think that APA is a player that is going to like transcend to the next level and have the mechanical skill and kind of like innate talent that JoJo has. But for Mad Lions, obviously this is an extremely good pickup. Like he's a great player. He's a great player who maybe fucked up while he was on Cloud9, but if he wants to fix that, and there's a structure around him that will help him, I don't think he's a lost cause. Right.
By
He's
the
very
way, I
talented.
even saw a rare example. This is incredibly rare in the modern day, Monty. Think about one of the most annoying things about having these like cultural fan bases now, like the French and the Spanish, etc., is obviously they get super butthurt over anything like that you mentioned about their players and their teams. This is how you know, Monty, that a stereotype is so known and well worn that they even themselves almost like jokingly embrace it. Because my joke when I saw this headline was I said, if you're someone who has a problem, like if you're basically always late, it's actually a genius move to go to a Spanish team. And even loads of people in the Spanish scene were like, I have to give him it. He's got it on this one. Because if you don't know in their culture, same with the Italians, by the way, they just do it at their own pace is the joke. Like people are never on time of when they say, if you say like 10 a.m., they'll come at 10 past 10 or whatever. Like I've told this story before. I once did a Counter-Strike event in Mykonos, the little island off Greece, right? And we used to order from this restaurant near the venue, breakfast, Monty. Listen to the words, breakfast. And the guy would have it delivered at 11:30. And I would be saying, what's going on? It's breakfast. And what was happening was they were ordering it at like 9:30, but the guy was getting up on this sleepy island, Monty, like walking his dog, having a cigarette, like, I'll make it in a minute. I'll get it, having his coffee or whatever. And the joke was at the end, he would make the breakfast. It's like, whoa, Dad, your breakfast is over, innit? But the point is, so anyway, since in their culture, it just is a little bit more lackadaisical in that sense. That's genius for Jojo. Now, if he's 5 minutes late, they're going to be like, "Wow, you're early. What you doing here 5 minutes early?" So he cracked it. That's him. Monty, don't work harder, work smarter. That's what he's doing.
He's going to be wondering where everyone else is, and they'll just be at siesta,
Exactly.
you know?
Exactly.
So yeah, I mean, this is obviously a major upgrade. I don't think you'd contend otherwise. I do wonder like how much they're paying him, but if they were able to like, I mean, LEC is so bad right now. If they were able to make it to Worlds with Frescowy, like they should be doing much better
Why
with
not?
Jojo. Like even at Jojo's worst, he is still 2 times the player that Frescowy was.
And you just think of this angle too, Monty. He's going to be playing against Caps and Larson and Humanoid. Like, I would actually be very interested to see what he'll do to his development as a player. Because, like, Doublelift didn't really need it because Doublelift really already had chances to play against top players and go to all the worlds and stuff. I want to see Jojo actually, like, have to, like, fucking cook, mate. Like, maybe he gets even better as a player.
Well, I think also El Yoya being there to boost him up is
Sure.
going to be amazing for him. Like that's a great like aggressive jungler who wants to skirmish, who wants you to play around his calls.
Sure.
And I think that one of the big problems on C9 was the fact that they appeared to have absolutely no in-game leader. And without that, Jojo really suffered. You know, I think we can look at when he was probably at his best on Evil Geniuses, and we could say, hey, he was playing with Inspired, who's a very active jungler who has a game plan within his mind, and that is the same of El Yoya. They're different. They're very different stylistically, I would say, but they are the ones that warp the game to their play style. And as good as Jojo is, he has been at his best when he has that guy. So, I think it's exciting.
Oh, it's a fire move. It's actually one of those ones where you don't see it coming because it's out of left field. And also, it turns out they weren't trolling because remember, this was hinted at like a week and a half ago where they were like, but no one knew were they memeing or whatever. Was it a real move, you know?
Yeah. So anyway, I think it's much more exciting than the potential G2 moves where it's like...
Here's the one thing we didn't address, though. I've realized the angle we didn't address, Monty. There's a very obvious elephant in the room for why this is the first NA to EU transfer and why Doublelift didn't go all those years ago and go and join a European team. Because if you were Doublelift back then, Monty, the only team you could have joined would have been G2 or Fnatic if they went to their investors and got a load of money. Like, it never would have made financial sense to leave a TSM team. Like these orgs could pay you millions of dollars. So there's another problem. You know all those people that were complaining on Twitter, half jokingly in the NA scene, you know, commentators and figures in the top teams that were like, wow, this is what it feels like to have the talent taken. No, guys, this is what it feels like when your league is smaller financially than the other league. And now, if the player wants not only a chance in this, by the way, in this case, to be more competitive, but actually a chance for more salary, he has to go abroad. That's actually the biggest black pill for the LCS is you guys are saying stop like importing talent. Bro, it's the other way around. You might have to export talent. Like if they want more money, they might have to go and play in G2 or some squad like that in the future, which is kind of a bit dark because that has been the flip, hasn't it? Like the LEC spot costs more more now. They've got all these fan bases that are engaged. It seems like the numbers go up for LEC. So actually, the other thing I worry about for the Americas is maybe you have even more brain drain. Maybe the next top player. By the way, God forbid a Blabber ever goes to Europe. What's NA good he left with at that point in time? You know, these are the players. By the way, you're all loving Massow now. What if he goes in 2 years to Fnatic or something? It'd be an interesting world, wouldn't it?
If I was G2, I'd be making a play for Masu right now.
I know. Yeah.
He had an epic tournament. He probably had the best ADC performance of any NA player at an international event ever. At this World, just purely on an individual level. And this is coming on his rookie season. I mean, this guy, I think, is capable of some really great things. He's got an immense amount of mechanical talent, and also it feels like the ability to learn and grow, and he's been growing very, very rapidly. And I mean, we'll get into this later, but I think that for all of you people out there who are saying, we just develop NA talent, guys. Why can't we develop NA talent? You guys keep giving the NA talent a free pass. You're like, all these pros just get recycled. And you're just like, one more year, guys, one more year. And Palafox is going to be world class. It's like, no, this shit happens fast. When you're good in the first year
the giveaway, Monty. Here's how you can laterally figure they're not being honest. That's not a good faith opinion when they say develop NA talent. Because notice how Monty, they didn't, when they heard Jojo got fired, go, please recruit Palafox. What, guys, that's the talent you said we were supposed to develop. We got him. You know the guy from NRG, he's here. Do you want him in Cloud now? We can put him in immediately if you want. Oh, you don't. You've decided already. You're like, I'm tired of playing with you, Woody. I need Buzz Lightyear now. That's what you've already done. You want Buzz Lightyear now. Exactly.
I saw literally zero comments that said Cloud9 should really be trading the farm for APA now that they need a mid laner. Like, come on, guys.
Well, yeah, until they lost Summer, Monty, I was supposed to believe signing APA was the reason Team Liquid was having all the success. Now no one wants him. Everyone wants him kicked off too, understandably. He has got like 3.5 champions.
So I really believe that, you know, the talent, and you and I have seen this over our 20 plus years in esports each. It is extremely rare for a player not to develop into a world-class player within like the first 2 years of their,
absolutely,
being on the professional scene. Yes. I'm actually struggling to think of a player who, like, 2 years after their debut, just suddenly became really good. You know, people will point to Smeb, but it was less than 2 years between when Smeb was really bad and when he got really good.
Yeah, exactly.
So, the development, I think, even if they start bad, tends to happen relatively quickly. Like, a player emerges and just is good. Like, that's how it works. I mean,
even the ones where, like, obviously they got better. It's like you see glimpses, though. Like, if you think of, like, I'll give you a modern day example. Maybe people think FBI took a long while. No, I remember when they first put FBI in for definitely in like Golden Guardians, and you could see he had mechanics, mate. You could see something there. Maybe he hadn't, like, polished his game and learned to lane or something. I don't know, but you could always say, like, by the way, think of any of the players in the Chinese, iBoy or Jackie Love, like, they all showed flourishes at the beginning. They just maybe hinted a bit or something. I'm with you. If you haven't seen anything for 2 years, they're not going to suddenly get twice as good, are they? Like, what would the reason be? They've been playing the game.
Yeah, and it's mostly like once you're given the stage experience and the resources of the coaches, like, you either do something with that and are a human being capable of growth, or you're just not, right? You're just not that guy. And maybe you can get better, but you're never going to be like a sensational, like, superstar level player. And that's just been true over, like, literally every esport that I have casted or watched. Like,
by the way, don't forget, it's not even just NA, Monty. Like, the one I've just realized, I always forget this detail. This is where it fucks with your head how long people are being in the game. By the way, Yike is 23 years old, boys.
Yeah.
We're all acting like these guys are all like 17 or something. You know what I mean?
Yike is never going to be that guy. You know what I mean?
No.
Like, Yike is never going to be that guy because he's not that guy already.
Weird, Monty, like I said, that whole thing where, look, here's the thing. If you ask me about this G2 5-man lineup, I would agree. I think this 5-man lineup had a special quality where they did manage to sort of be fairly resistant to metas and constantly get back to the top. Obviously, they were incredibly dominant in Europe. But this whole thing people were doing where, by the way, I actually think Yike is pretty good. I think you showed it this year too. But this idea that, like, he was like, it's impossible to upgrade over him. It's like, that's also also such a weak mentality because I have to say, you know how sports teams work. It's not like they work based on paper strength anyway. They tend to work based on like other factors, you know. Like,
Sure.
so the joke is you don't even necessarily need a jungler as good as Yike. Maybe you need somebody who fits something else for the team. Like maybe you need a more supportive Jankos as jungler. Who knows, right? So I actually found even that whole conversation weird where we were treating these players as though they were like, say, Wahan Sama, as though it's like inconceivable anyone could be better than them. Like, what a weird way to look at the game. They're not goats in that way, you know.
Yeah. And I'm not sure that going to a rookie jungler is really the way of the world, especially because that, you know, that might affect, especially the way Caps plays, and it might affect their ability to, you know, but, you know, it really depends on how long Caps can stay good. Caps is what, 24? But I mean, at 24, a lot of players like tend to start entering a decline in terms of their abilities. And maybe that won't be true of Caps, but you do have to have a little bit of concern that the training wheels time necessary for a rookie jungler may be too long and may never actually bear fruit in the way that you anticipate. It may be too long and it may not actually work for it to be relevant to Caps, who's still at the peak of his powers.
I agree with you as well. Unless you get the craziest generational talent ever and you just lock into some like guy who just has like the Stefano factor where they just don't chalk ever and they always play amazing. Bro, can anyone really conceive that at 2025 Worlds, we're now talking on this episode's parallel equivalent for the semis? Like, oh, can you believe, Monty, this rookie jungler in G2 is going head to head now with Canyon in the semis at Worlds. I think they can win and go to the final. Like, no one's going to be having that convo, surely. Aren't we all being a bit like delusional? Even think that? Like, the joke is, if I asked you right now, you know, my old question at the end of the grilled interviews that, you know, you have to make a team to beat the aliens, right? Instead, we're making a team like LS did to beat like the Koreans. The joke is right now, you wouldn't take a rookie, you'd take Inspired. That'd be the play you take for junglers at Western team. Yeah, these are the people because they're ready and they're showing you it right now that they can do it. Like the point is, I don't have to gamble on Skewbond if I can have Inspired. Can I? Because I already know what Inspired can do. I saw him do it, bro. He almost did beat them.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. I'm skeptical that this is the choice. Like it feels as though, and I understand why they're doing what they're doing. They are saying that our floor is really high with our current roster, but that's not good enough. We have to make our ceiling higher for international events, even though they did place top 4 at MSI and probably should have made at least top 8 at this World Championship. They want to really like make that push, and they're willing to roll the dice that the floor lowers for that. I think they obviously know a lot more about the players that they are bringing on board and have thought about this, but it is an enormous risk. It is an enormous risk that they will no longer, you know, easily challenge for Europe. I think the fortunate thing for G2 is that all of the other European teams are just GM'd so badly that it is hard to imagine that Caps alone could not carry them to further titles, right? Oh. Maybe MDK is kind of a threat now, but JoJo's a question mark after his performance. He didn't have a great year in Cloud9. Were there external factors to that? Is he remotivated now? Who the fuck knows? You know, a lot of these other teams that maybe put together probably aren't going to have the strength. It looks like we're getting just another year of Humanoid on Fnatic. They're going to have to look for another AD carry, perhaps a new support at the same time, because like if they bring in a non-Korean AD carry, does Jun get kicked off this roster as well? Oscarinen is re-signed for I have no idea what reason. BDS has been more than the sum of its parts. Obviously, bringing in Irrelevant feels, I think, pretty good for BDS. But like, is that really like the piece you need to beat G2? It doesn't feel like it.
Do we have more roster moves? Are we going to the games now? What are we doing?
BDD re-signed to KT.
Here's the sad thing about that. There's two ways you can look at that, Monty. You can either just be naively optimistic and say, you know what, maybe they're going to rebuild and put a load of good players on. Because, by the way, here's the thing people haven't thought about Monty. It's implied, maybe even if they win Worlds, look, they're not going to win Worlds. I don't care what anyone says. T1's probably going to have players that leave after this year. Maybe they're available. Maybe like Order or someone ends up on fucking KT. Who knows? It could be a world where they rebuild, but there could also be a world, Monty, where he's just signed the last contract of his LCK career to never do anything in KT. There is that world too. Exactly. I have to share that in. It's very plausible, isn't it? I know. That's sad as well. BDD deserves better, mate. Come on.
Well, I'm sure he got a fat paycheck from KT. Like KT
Sure.
has the years where they don't spend a lot of money, and then the years that they do. Like this is one of the years where they didn't actually spend a lot of money compared to last year, which was like the cuz aiming, BDD Lehen's roster, Deft roster. So this year's roster where it was like Deft,
Oh
Pure
no,
Shake,
it was
Barrel.
aiming. Yeah,
It was aiming
right.
previous year. But anyway, this year's roster was less of a spend. And like KT sometimes splashes out really big time and tries to make super teams. They tried to do that a couple of years ago with Scout, which is where all of this contract drama partially was coming from. Like partially it was like he weaseled his way off of EDG, but also part of it was like he literally did sign a contract with KT and then had 2 contracts signed and was like, oh shit. And so he was supposed to come to KT a couple of years ago, and they were trying to build a super team, and then they had to like really like dial it back, and that's where we got the like the Vikla roster from, like the Arya Vikla roster.
What you're saying is Scout had a year where he had a contract for everyone, and then the year after that changed everything. By the way, I'm just going to start using that shit format from that Mark Merrill thing. It can be used for anything. The best part about that, guys, is they're even interchangeable. Like on the year when you do something for everything, you're also changing everything because you're giving someone everything. But then the next year, you're also giving something for everyone because you change everything. It doesn't mean anything. It's just interchangeable, just generic terms that mean nothing specifically. Yeah. I agree, though. That is a mad one, because the sad thing is, I want to believe, you know what? Fuck it. I'm going to believe in it. I'm just going to believe KT's actually going to build around him and get some other talent. So, by the way, that's another thing, Monty. If you think about the cost of these teams, Handball Life and GenG, they're paying fucking massive salaries. So, not all of them, everyone isn't going to redouble down on massive teams with super teams, etc. So, I'm sure there'll be some players available. You can maybe get someone good.
Right. I think the issue is for KT is that they're probably pretty likely to go with their challengers roster to surround basically.
Oh, fucking hell, just BDD and a bunch of kids.
BDD perfect and a bunch of kids.
Why?
So like Hambak, their jungler, is pretty hyped up. They have speaking of hyped up, their ADC is called Hype, and Wei is their support. So considering
we don't need another player called Way. We don't need another one. Got too many already.
This time.
Okay, it's still going to be a nightmare for casters, bro.
Yeah, we could get the actual Way versus Way games. So I think because the KT Challengers team has done very well, and they nice. Won the LCK Challengers Summer Playoffs. I think probably what's going to happen is that Perfect stays, BDD stays, and then they call up the bot lane and the jungler. Maybe they've got more ambition than that. I believe Viper's contract is up this year, so
that'll be interesting.
Maybe there's a possibility of that, but then there's a question of who do you slot in at support in order to properly like make a run with him.
Barrel, of course. Barrel. Bring him back. Bring back Barrel.
Please no. So yeah, like Hanwha is a team. I think most of their players are contracted through the end of next year. Yeah, everyone else is contracted through the end of next year. But Viper is a free agent at the end of this year. So that's probably going to be one of the biggest dominoes that has to fall in the Korean scene. Also, I think another issue, Thorin, is that the start of the luxury tax, aka the soft cap, is coming in this coming year.
Right.
And what that probably means is like a lot of teams may not be able to afford to put together, rosters like Hanwha Life's.
I mean, wasn't it something like, essentially, as you say, it's a bit like the luxury tax in the NBA. The idea was if you have these super teams like Hanwha, then, or maybe even SKT, you just have to pay money essentially to the league that gets distributed to other people or something, right?
Yeah. So I think KT probably signed BDD to a fat contract and, is hoping that their talent, their talent development system is going to provide, a competitive roster, which is, I think something that a lot of Chinese and Korean teams are going to have to be more reliant on the future. Like, I think people are going to have to change from trying to make these super teams to actually having really good talent development and like trying to be the next Griffin. because that's going to be a more viable way to win at the international level. Like, I just don't know if we're going to see.
I mean, that
any
is
more...
what T1 did. If you think about it, they originally
Yes.
did get their next crop of talents. Whereas, as you're saying, the others have just basically done really good big name signings.
Right.
They just made super
Yeah,
teams.
I mean, with T1, it was like, okay, we have Faker and Keria, who are kind of the, older players, but we're going to bring in Guma and Owner and Zeus, and that's worked out very well for them. Now, would they have been able to keep that roster together this year? Probably not. With the new systems in place, unless they wanted to play a lot. I just don't think we're going to see like a lot of these JDG / BLG / GenG style like super teams moving forward. I just think a lot of the owners, are already very upset about the amount of money that is being put in their pockets from Riot. And it looks like, by all accounts, Riot is going to be decreasing that revenue share in the next year. We also know that in LPL, they're actually lowering the salary cap in the LPL because the revenue is just not very good over there.
People were making a lot of money, though. There was people making like $9 million and stuff. That was the claim,
JDG
right?
had a $16 million roster. They had a $16 million roster last year. So that's not going to be tenable. That's not going to be tenable any longer. So I don't know exactly which direction KT's going on. My hunch is the one I said, where it's like him and Perfect and then like 3 actual rookies. But perhaps they'll like take a stab at Viper or try and get another big name signing. I do think, for what it's worth, like Perfect was quite good this year. He was quite good.
There's nothing wrong with him,
especially for a rookie. But also you could make a claim that the top lane has been pretty weak in LCK, right? When Doran and Kingen are 2 of the 3 all pros.
That's true. Yeah.
It's not great.
I also think as well, I mean, let's see if it can happen or not. Because as you say, obviously China has their own issues coming up. I wonder if the other bummer would be if Viper goes back to LPL. What if some LPL team wants to take him on? He's obviously really good still.
I'm sure he'll get offers. So yeah, those are some of the roster moves. Like Nisqy's been rumored to potentially be going to Shopify Rebellion with contracts and fudge.
Sounds like they're spending, right? Sounds like they're going to fucking.
I mean,
do they have money, Shopify?
Well, first off, Shopify has infinity money, and this is a passion project of their CEO, who's like a legacy StarCraft and esports fan, right? So maybe he's willing to splash out. But people were saying like, oh, Nisqy, $400,000. Guys, if the revenue share from Riot is $1.5 million or $2 million, which is lower than it was this year, spending $400K on one player is not outrageous. Like you could still run a team profitably easily. Even if you had, your other players, you could have 4 other players at, $75K, which is the league minimum, or $100K. And then you could pay for some coaches and accommodation on top of that and still probably be in the black. So I think there are ways in which, you can pay a player $400K and make it work out. If you go a little bit above the revenue, maybe you decide to lose some money, because you also remember that one of the things that Shopify is doing, Shopify functions more like, a KT, right? Which is that the company owns the team, therefore it is a marketing exercise from the company. So not only do they get revenue share from Riot, Shopify Rebellion, any additional money can be counted against a marketing spend for Shopify as a company. So it has inherent value because they are their own main sponsor, right? That is cheaper, right? You could potentially make money while broadcasting the Shopify name. So I don't think they probably also mind as much, like taking a small loss. Would be my thoughts on that. So yeah, I do believe like that's a possible roster. It would be interesting to see Nisqy come back to NA. Do I think that sounds like a particularly great team? No. Right?
That's just a copium team, because it's like if you liked all those names at their prime, you think, oh my God, but it's like, let's see if it works for us, guys.
Yeah.
Let's see if it works. That feels like another like Dignitas. Oh, we've got all the old boomers. Let's see first.
So
it's interesting to see Nisqy play, though, for obvious reasons. Obviously, let's see what he can do with contracts. That'll be an interesting pairing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how excited I am about that. Like, does anybody really think that Nisqy's superpowering contracts is like the same as him playing with, a player like Ilyoya or a player like Blabber? Probably not. I'm not sure that's really the right style. But we'll see if that rumor's even true, right? That was like a stupid leak, so it's hard to say. Probably Nisqy's still evaluating all his options would be my take on this. I doubt he's committed to anything yet, and he can't actually sign a contract until Worlds is over, regardless. So
Yes, I do keep telling people like that in my Discord, mate. They'll see those like cheap esports things, and then they go, "Oh my god! Oh, so now Fnatic can't get irrelevant." It's like nobody can sign the contract yet. You can't sign until the day after Worlds or whatever it is. So, like, technically, as long as the guy doesn't like, well, I guess you could also agree with it beforehand, but you could actually sell them the contract. But all these are just reports anyway, though. They're just saying it like the
I
plan
think
is
the
that
only
person
one, like
goes there.
Jojo might have been able to do that because I think his contract was voided from Cloud9 from
Right, that could
his
be true.
lateness
Yes,
and everything like that.
yes,
So maybe he's not under contract right now, but I mean, Nisqy still is.
yes.
Yeah, we will see. We will see. All right. I think that's enough of that. We've got a couple sponsors for you guys today. The first of which is relevant if you've been watching along with us over at 4Play for Halloween. We highly recommend that you guys check out ExpressVPN. Basically always useful for privacy reasons. If you guys don't use a VPN at this point in time, you're just throwing. Like, this thing will keep you safe and keep your data secure, especially if you're on public Wi-Fi networks. But also, you will probably just spend less money on content on the internet. Not what you're thinking, guys. Not that way.
Yeah.
The legal way.
Yes.
And that's
Okay.
if you want to watch a bunch of Halloween movies. So, for example, you can get many additional things by using ExpressVPN because Netflix has different movies available in different countries. And you can figure out if that movie that you want to watch by using the power of Google or other search engines, where that content is, VPN to that location, get onto Netflix, and then you will be able to watch that movie that you might have been renting from Amazon Prime or may not even have access to at all, frankly. For free with your existing subscriptions. So, like, for example, The Exorcist is available in Japan. And I Know What You Did Last Summer is here in Korea, but they're not on other Netflix platforms, right? So there you go. These are fun ones. And we have actually been on 4Play doing an arc of spooky deep cuts, or scary deep cuts as we call it, and those movies may be a little bit finicky for you to find everywhere because they're not exactly super well known. For example, I subscribe to the Criterion channel, and that is a great service, but it helps if you're in America for that one, right? And that had Cure, our latest movie, which is a Japanese film that was really good. So these are advantages that you can have for ExpressVPN, and it can actually save you quite a bit of money. And not only that, but we can save you money. Get your money's worth and get 3 extra months of ExpressVPN for free when you go to expressvpn.com/summoning. That's expressvpn.com/summoning. expressvpn.com/summoning. And then as a side effect, you also just have complete security on public Wi-Fi with your phone and or laptops if you're traveling around. So there you go. Definitely recommend ExpressVPN. It's worked for absolutely everything I've wanted to use it for. I am literally using it right now on this show, guys, because if I don't use it to Japan from Korea, the VOD isn't saved on Twitch for you guys to view, because obviously Twitch is no longer, supporting Korean broadcasters in the ways that they once did. So constantly useful to me is what I'm saying. So there you go. Thanks, ExpressVPN. Again, best way to support us, support our sponsors. Please do that. We give you guys good deals. They're good products. We don't screw around. Let's talk about the quarterfinals, Thorin. We got to start FlyQuest versus GenG. I am dying to hear your thoughts on this and whether you think this was an overreaction from NA fans about the performance, what you thought of GenG's performance. Like, is FlyQuest an international threat at this point in time? Thorin, was this the real World Finals in the quarterfinals?
Here's what's funny is I actually was waiting for this because I already knew, because especially obviously there's so many people who are like legacy fans or T1 fans who want to hate on Chovy. They want GenG to be frauds, bro. They want it to turn out that they were actually that good and only T1's the good LCK team. You know what's funny? I was loving this series, Monty, and here's why. Because I bet on esports, don't I? So the only world, Monty, where I was ever going to get good odds for GenG against T1 is if GenG somehow looked fraudulent. Because I think, like you've hinted there, this is the one series, I alluded to it earlier, I actually think LS actually is right. I think it was doing weird picks and silly draft things that actually was able to get like it wasn't even like an edge. It was just like unique angles where you could win a game, or you had like a where you could play something out that wasn't like what people would expect. You could tell by the way GenG had never played against some of these comps, or they didn't actually know like how they were going to play. So I think essentially this is an example of where styles make fights, as they say. And this particular one was very interesting. Like obviously GenG was on the look, here's the other problem as well. They also did do that thing, Monty, where some of their game wins were also very dominant. Like some of theirs, like they did have one where they had like one was game 4 where they absolutely clapped them. Like they had some times where they looked really good. So I think people will overreact and think GenG sucks because of this. Whereas I would more say interesting angle from FlyQuest. They actually did, like you said about the Masso angle. If someone told me actually their ADC is going to be like one of the best players in the server, then maybe we have a chance. Like there was some good players in this series for sure. But and by the way, on paper, it absolutely would have been the biggest upset in history. Like this is, remember, GenG absolutely credibly, they still might be as being talked about as like they might be the best League of Legends team ever. Well, the idea a Western team actually beats with only one Korean beats that squad would have been mental in a best of 5.
Especially but with Chovy's like DRX understudy. Like the story is great.
Yeah. I do think it was a little bit overhyped. It was a mega series though. If you wanted thrills.
It's all the fans ever want, Thorin. They just want the jump scare, right? They're not into the psychological horror. They're just into the jump scare that thrills them temporarily. And it was a bit of a jump scare, you know, to put out your point. Like, you know, Dom said this on Power Spike, and I agree with him, which is like typically FlyQuest has suffered in the early game, and when they have the mistakes in the early game, whether it's dying in lane, like I talked all year, guys, about Masu and Busio or Bwipo just randomly dying in lane and then causing very, very difficult situations for Inspired to deal with and try and triage. That has gotten significantly better as the year has gone on. And to the degree that, especially in Masu and Busio's case, it's almost evaporated at Worlds. Like we're not seeing the dumb all-ins and the dumb deaths anymore. And part of that is, guess who scooped up Mythy when the opportunity was right? It was FlyQuest. They brought him in. I was incredibly critical of Busio this year, and for good reason. He was useless in spring playoffs and at MSI. He would literally run around in a team fight like a chicken with his head cut off using no abilities, guys. Like actually straight inting. And I think he had nerve issues, but honestly, bringing in Mythy, and he has had a massive glow up, I think, this split in particular. Part of that's having, you know, more experience. I don't think he got a lot of help when he was on 100 Thieves with Double Lift previously. This is only the second year of his play, but he looked massively improved, and he was a big playmaker in this series. So this is what I mean, guys. If a player is going to show up, typically they show up in the first couple years. You know, sometimes there's going to be a bad team that they're on. Maybe they let go and they get remotivated, or they find, you know, another gear that they can shift into. But this has been a massive glow up for Busio in particular, and I do want to recognize that. Masu was always mechanically gifted. It was more about his decision making. Quad was clearly an immense upgrade over Jensen, who was just insanely washed. And then we still have Inspired and Bwipo. And Bwipo is a polarizing player, but when he does things well, he does them very well. You just have to understand what Bwipo is. Like, he is the wild card you can throw in there, and sometimes those factors will make you win games. They will also cause you to lose games. That's just, you got to take the bad with the good. Do I think that FlyQuest would probably be better with somebody not Bwipo? Yes.
Here's the problem, Monty. You've just blown everyone's mind there. How can that be? Bwipo's the reason why they had a chance. This is where Bwipo giveth and Bwipo taketh. Because you know what, Monty? When he was playing Urgot, it shouldn't even be a champion, but he is just uniquely good at that champion. And he somehow if you get him in the game, he can do shit on it. The Galio wasn't bad. That was quite an interesting angle. But there's two things here. One, here's the problem with Bwipo. You can also predict him, Monty. Like, if you just leave Renekton up, what do you think he's going to lock in? That's a flaw, mate. They want you to pick the Renekton. And by the way, I want to just know this. On game 5, remember, Monty, for game 5, you have to think like a coach. You have to think, you know, at the end of this draft, when I can't talk to these players anymore, am I comfortable with what they've locked in, that they can now win the game? When he locked in Set, what did you think? Because when I saw that, I was like, I think GenG's getting this, boys. You know what I mean? Like, listen, we've got a fiddlestick Set draft. I feel like you know, it could be the greatest upset of all time. I don't think it's happening, personally. I think we've cooked a bit too much on that one. What do you think?
Yeah. I think like that
I
last draft
think
was a
Alex
bit.
even said,
Look,
I think
I
Alex on Twitter was even like, when he locked in the set, he was like, I guess I'm going off the balcony tonight. I said, yeah, no shit. What are we going to do? It's the reach.
Look, I think when it boils down to this series, you have to there
I
are
love it.
good things about FlyQuest performance, undoubtedly, right?
Sure.
A criticism you can make about the history of North American League of Legends is that when good teams give NA teams an opportunity to win the game, the NA team doesn't close, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah, for
They
sure.
closed. They did.
Yep.
They really did close.
Yeah.
Was it the cleanest? Could we have argued in game number 1, like, why are we going Baron when the Dragon Soul's coming up? They didn't obviously know that, the bounties were going to trigger. And also, fuck this game, League of Legends, where GenG is literally down, Baron dies, GenG it triggers bounties. GenG walks to mid lane, takes mid lane turret, the bounties don't spawn by for mid lane turret, spawn. Then they immediately get Drake for free. Then they immediately get bottom tower for free. Then they immediately get top tower for free, and they just get all the bounty gold and just catch up. And then now there's a negative Baron power play for FlyQuest.
Yes.
Like, that is bullshit. That is
Yes.
bullshit. The prize for GenG should have been, we just take the Drake and prevent you from getting soul, and now you can push. Like, the fact that they were able to close the gold gap and eliminate the Baron advantage was so insanely dog shit, because they were only like 4 or 5k gold down when that sequence started to happen. But because FlyQuest had 3 Drakes and because they had the Baron, now the bounty system comes into place. And it's another opaque mechanic in this game where nobody actually knows how the bounties are triggered, right?
Yes.
We have an idea, but nobody's actually said, like, these are the parameters. And it's really annoying. And like, GenG, I think, should be clapped out of that game. Like, they should, that rubber band mechanic in that scenario is horse shit and should not be allowed to exist. So I was pretty frustrated with that. It's like seeing that in that game and how fast they were able to like close the gold gap again, for reasons that had nothing to do with FlyQuest's skill or GenG's skill, right? It's just kind of arbitrarily inserted into the perfect moment in time for GenG to make that kind of comeback.
By the way, I'll go on.
No, I was just going to say, like, but GenG, in the games that they lost, they made very big mistakes. And FlyQuest wasn't punished.
Yes.
They had, arguably better lane swaps some of the time, which is, something that I think they've massively improved on. But if we just literally look at some of the plays GenG has made, and if we look at how GenG has lost this year, they haven't lost very much, but when they lose, it is because they underestimate their opponents and they start doing dumb shit. And you are not going to convince me that first fight at Grubs, where Keen like lands a great equalizer, and then they have the split call, and like Chovy is just ulting into 3 of them. And then Busio.
That was in it, bro, for real. Yeah.
Well,
that's how you know. Put it this way, I'll even point out where people are biased. Just because he's Chovy doesn't mean he's allowed to do that. Like, he just got popped. It was ridiculous, wasn't it?
Well, I mean, and maybe the call was that they were going in.
Sure.
But Canyon was literally just sitting on Grubs, and you chunked them out. So you could go in on that play if they were going in, or you could just walk away and get the Grubs for free. But the fact that Chovy goes in, and again, credit, that's a throw. Who caught it? Busio caught it. He came and he just instantly, flashed, like headbutt polved, got the pick. They killed Chovy. It's a great play from FlyQuest. What is encouraging is that you typically do not see that level of awareness or that level of punish from NA teams. And FlyQuest played a scaling game, right? And I don't think like the Jinx pick was necessarily very good for GenG here. Like, clearly they're trying to get like a Jinx reset comp, but the problem with getting a Jinx reset comp is that FlyQuest is fucking running Xin Zhao, Alistar, Seraphine. Like, Xin Zhao is, if he gets low, he just ults. If Alistar gets caught, he just ults.
Seraphine was also mega for all the healing and shit, wasn't it? Yeah.
Seraphine just provides immense shields. Then they get a fucking Mountain Soul in this game. Like, it is actually like unwinnable for a Jinx reset comp unless the Jinx is incredibly fed. Yeah. So FlyQuest did a great job of the read. I do think their coaching staff, really prepared for this. Obviously, FlyQuest is trying to leverage some of NA's expertise in using Seraphine, which is a champion that's just, like, not used in other regions.
It's not played anywhere else, guys.
Right, but if you don't punish Seraphine, she just scales insanely. True. And so FlyQuest was able to use that. So like I do think like credit is due to FlyQuest, and they did, quibbles aside about like Baron over Soul. they did do a pretty effective job of just slamming the door shut on GenG, controlling the vision around objectives, forcing GenG into awkward situations. But it was, let's not, we shouldn't overstate, FlyQuest's strengths when we can also say that GenG should not have been in that position. Like, it was their errors that put them there, and they played badly. The other game that they lost, for example, Bwipo TP's bot. They don't, that is a punishable play. That is a punishable play. Masu and Busio were not doing well in the bot lane. Bwipo was winning top because GenG had a terrible level 1 where Keen got to lane late, and he's laning Renekton into Urgot. And at that point in time, Bwipo is basically attempting to transfer his lead into the bottom side, right? He pushes up, he starts proxying the wave. GenG's trying to dive the bot lane. He sees this opportunity, but they fail to get the kill. And it's only because GenG re-engages that the double kill even happens for Masu, and then they're off to the races. So if they just walk away from that, or if they get the kill, if GenG gets the kill, that becomes a very different play. Bwipo's super far behind. They don't get any advantages. He's now a top laner in the bot lane with no TP. Keen catches right back up. Keen had a very good, he's had some very good games on Renekton. Keen was the best player on GenG in this series, in my opinion. So also Pays and Lehens were really bad in this series. They were bad. Sure. It got even to the point, Thorin, where I was like, what is Lehens doing? If you see Ashe Seraphine, doesn't Lehens play Blitzcrank? Isn't that what Lehens does? You can't give him a Blitzcrank angle like that. That's crazy. Why wasn't he taking it? So anyway, there's a lot going on here, but it is a combination of both FlyQuest playing really well, but also GenG being super disappointing in terms of their prep, in terms of their individual abilities, in terms of their teamwork and their cohesion and their decision making. This was a bad day for GenG. It's a bad day.
And like I say, even as much as FlyQuest could have won, there was also some moments that were quite embarrassing. Like after that first game where you get so hyped, then they lose to fucking Kassadin, just get their shit pushed in completely.
That was probably Jovi's best individual game.
It's hilarious, wasn't it?
But I can explain the Kassadin pick to you, Thorin, because it actually is a good pick in this situation, I think.
Okay.
Because people will tunnel on the fact that the Kassadin Nidalee jungle mid synergy is shit. That is just true. Nidalee loves lane setup, right? To land a spear, to all in. Kassadin's a weak early game jungler. He provides you nothing to help with Nidalee. He literally can't respond to ganks pre-6. So it's not a good pick for it. He also can't create pressure in lane in any matchup, basically. And so if you're Nidalee and you want to invade the enemy jungle and play around mid pressure, it's bad. Okay. So, but the thing is that as bad as that synergy is, the champions that FlyQuest picks are very good for Kassadin. And Kassadin, first off, he's bad into AD mid matchups. He knows he's playing into Ori. Okay, so that's number one. His passive gives him a 10% damage reduction to magic damage. Okay, he also has the magic damage shield on his Q. Then you're wondering, okay, well, what about this Nunu? Well, it helps that they have an AP jungler as well. It's not an AD mid, and an AD jungler. It's not even some combination of AP and AD. It's literally all magic damage. So again, gets extra value out of the passive, gets extra value out of the magic shield. On top of that, Q, which used to be a silence, was changed on the Kassadin rework to give a channel interrupt. Nunu's ult is a channel. So basically, he can cancel Nunu's ult whenever he wants to. That's excellent. And then he's also very good into Ezreal. And you may be like, why is he good into Ezreal? Well, Ezreal spams skills. Void Pulse, which is Kassadin's E, his cone that slows people and does a gazillion damage, is power. It gets its cooldown reduced every time the enemy casts a spell around him. So if you have champions like Ezreal that are just throwing out a million spells every few seconds, his E cooldown just drops to 0, and he's just constantly spamming it. And the power of Ezreal is obviously you get to reposition, right? He's very mobile AD carry, but Kassadin has an infinite number of blinks, so Ezreal cannot escape. He cannot escape. So Ezreal is both powering up Kassadin and he cannot escape from him at the same time. So it's really miserable. There's also no lockdown really on the composition because it's Renekton, Nunu, Orianna, Ezreal, Rakan. Who is supposed to CC the Kassadin? You have no point and click CC. I mean, basically, the Renekton should never be close to him. and Busio should never be able to hit him with anything with Rakan. So, you know, you don't have an Ashe to like kite him or anything like that. You don't have a Maokai just to like W him or do any of this. So it is a very free Kassadin game because you both cannot punish his laning phase very easily, and your composition is just kind of bad into Kassadin. So it was a pretty fun angle, I think, to see from Chovy there, and it was very creative.
Problem is, though, did you ever actually believe GenG was going to lose the series? Because like game 5 was like the letdown, wasn't it? You know, you couldn't really believe it. Like I said, game 4 was the clap, and game 5 was the letdown.
Right. I think I do have some bones to pick with FlyQuest game 4 draft. Because for me, when you're up 2-1, that's the game where the weird shit comes in, right?
Yes, agreed. Yes, they played too safe, right?
They played Renekton, Sejuani, Orianna, Ezreal, Rakan. Like, I just don't think you're going to beat GenG with like a fully standard playstyle, right? And I don't think that when you give Keen K'Sante, he is the best K'Sante player in the world. I don't think Nidalee's even necessarily good, but Canyon is just so good at Nidalee, it may not matter. And I also think, you know, you've heard me complain about this, Thorin, but I have been banging on the fact that GenG just abandoned the Tristana picks. They abandoned it. Like, they should have played it in the finals versus Hanwha. Didn't play it. Just let Zeka have it or banned it themselves.
Chovey's just so insanely good on it, isn't it? You'd think he'd force it every time it's available.
Also good for their play style. Like, Chovy wants to be in the side lane CSing and creating pressure. That's how they play the game. Tristana is the best mid in the game to do that. So I just thought it was entirely bizarre that so the last time we really saw them use Tristana was when they played Hanwha in the very last game of the summer season. They played Hanwha, they beat him 2-0, they played Tristana both times. This caused Hanwha to ban Tristana in every game of the upper bracket final that GenG won, right? And then it was in the finals that they just gave it away for free or banned it themselves. And then at Worlds, they just hadn't played it. And I just found it so bizarre because this was, I mean, it's a pick that Chovy is individually extremely good on. He did fuck up his buffer, you know, and die to a stupid Orianna ult. That's true. I don't think this was a great series from Chovy.
It was.
But you know, the Tristana is a very good pick for Chovy as a player, and it's a very good pick for GenG as a team. And it's something that I really wanted to see them bring back. And you guys have heard me say that on this show over and over and over again, right? So I do think like trying to play the standard composition and then attempting to play into like Ashe, Trist, Nidalee, K'Sante and giving all that to GenG, probably not the move, right? And then we get to game 5 and it's like, well, why are we sending it with wacky picks now? And also,
the GenG draft's so interesting, mate. Like the way they did it's just like, these are just cynical, mate. We'll just take all these champions. Thank you.
And you know, the way the meta is developing, Thorin, is basically like, you know, the 3 red side bans are Yone, Aurora, Skarner, okay? And you can either choose to ban all three of these, basically, or hope that blue side bans one of them, or you have to just kind of leave them up and then just kind of let the chips fall where they may and hopefully get like a couple of these picks. The thing about FlyQuest is they can't play Aurora, so they have to ban it now on blue side when GenG doesn't ban it. And they, you know, Quad's not a great Yone player.
No, exactly. That's the problem.
And so you take the Yone, and I heard they did an interview with Inspired after the games were over, and Inspired said they forgot that GenG played Smolder, which is
impossible,
unbelievable.
I know.
Because they have played Smolder multiple games at this World Championship.
This is even the matchup that all the Korean mids play. It's Yone and Smolder.
Yes.
We play all game long.
Chovy has played this matchup in the upper bracket finals of the summer playoffs versus Hanwha Life, and he plays it exclusively either into ranged AD or into Yone. That's it. He plays it into Tristana, plays it into Lucian, plays it into Yone. You know what I mean?
Why is Inspired doing that shit excuse the producers of Game of Thrones made? You know, when there was that episode in the last season where she just inexplicably lost one of her dragons because it just got shot down, and then they said that weird thing like, "Oh, she forgot that fleet was out there." You know, they made that like mad comment. Why are they using that about Chovy, the best player in the world, and what he plays mid lane for fuck's sake? How are you forgetting on Game 5 the draft? What are you talking about, bro?
Right,
That's
and so
mental.
you have to actually say, and like he's been. Like he's been especially good on the Smolder, right?
It's mega.
Even in games that he has lost on Smolder,
Yes.
he himself has looked really good.
Yeah.
And then basically there's a team-wide collapse here where we basically can't create pressure on the mid lane. Smolder is just shitting on Yone in the mid lane, even more than normal. And like I'm doing the VOD review on my stream of this game, and I'm like, dear God, he's got like 125 stacks at like 13 minutes into this game, or like 12 minutes into this game. He gets 225 stacks at 18 minutes into the game. Now that's like pre-patch Smolder like speed. You know, that would be fast even for pre-patch Smolder. But because he's freely trading on the Yone, he's getting so many advantages in these fights, like he just comes online extremely quickly. And GenG, I think they realized that as long as they pick scaling, like FlyQuest couldn't do shit in this series. Because what do? We just go back to Smolder Ziggs. Ziggs has basically fallen out of the bans, and teams still haven't been picking it. But I think here it was very prescient, because if you take Rumble and you take Smolder and you take Ziggs, you could turtle forever. You just, all three of those champions get ult waves, and that's it. There is no more wave, right? You can turtle forever. If they try to dive you, Maokai and Skarner. Like, they can't, FlyQuest, people will say, oh man, if only they had snuck that Baron. Their comp is, their comp doesn't even make sense. It's Set, Fiddlesticks, Yone, Callista, Alistair, okay? So, let's pretend they get Baron. How do they siege a turret? Tell me how you siege a turret with that composition. Like, they will just clear the waves on you forever. I don't even think it matters if FlyQuest get that Baron. I do think it was a good Baron attempt by them, and I do think they read the game state and were we definitely lose if we don't get this Baron, and we have Fiddle and Callista so we can two-man it. I think Whippo on set should have stayed in the top lane.
People are mistaken that, like, winning that Baron doesn't win you the game. Come on.
Yeah.
Would still have been, you still have plenty left to do to close that game out.
Right. And you have plenty left to do, and like you are still at a massive disadvantage. And like I don't even think you can actually put pressure on with the Baron. So there was too much map control, too much ability to turtle, too much scaling. Like I think GenG had just downloaded them by that point in time. And when you don't make the early moves, like when they don't get the Alistair roams off, or they don't get the Fiddlestick ganks off, like it's just over. It's fucking over, right? And FlyQuest hasn't been the most active early game team. They have not been the most successful early game team in the world. Like we know that about them. They never will be, because Inspired is there, right? And that's not who Inspired is as a player.
Oh, of course not.
So the problem is like GenG tried to play some more early game compositions. I don't think that's who GenG is. GenG is the super annoying.
Oh, of course.
We
anything,
just cross
is what they do. Yeah, they just like scale up as well. Like
what they do is they avoid you. They trade up in cross maps, and then they fight you when at like third, fourth Drake. And then they win that fight because they have 4,000 more gold than you.
That was even the uncharacteristic thing early in the series that let FlyQuest get ahead. It's like GenG was, like you say, was opting into so many fights where you could just walk away. And then FlyQuest, I'll give them credit, was being decisive, and they were like turning the fights and all going ham. And Massa was doing some fucking crazy shit. But at the end of the day, if you want to be really cynical, Monty, you go back and you look, you won 2 games. One of them you had Seraphine, and the other one you had Urgot. So it's like, you know what, you cooked, but then as I say, in game 5, you overcooked. You burned the fucking cookies. So unfortunately, you overcooked on that one.
Yeah. So look, it was an impressive performance. It was more than we expected.
It's definitely exciting as fuck.
I do think in the last couple of games, their performance was overstated. I do not think the last 2 games were close. at any
You
point in
don't
time. You
mean
look at the
Monty.
gold, but
The thing that, if you don't know, Monty was saying facetiously early that if GenG wins Worlds now, no, FlyQuest wasn't the second best team at Worlds, you fucking marks. Because by the way, I'm just going to say it right now. I said it earlier. I actually think this is going to give like Corpium and Horpium to all the other teams. And then GenG probably just beat them easily. You know what I mean? Like, because no one's going to play like this against them, mate. Like, probably just win Worlds now. There you go. Sound.
yeah. So, for FlyQuest, I think, though, you are looking forward to this team running it back because they did show consistent improvement throughout the year. The question is whether you want Bwipo or not, or you want a more standard top laner. But also the question becomes, I mean, you can't replace him really with anybody in NA. Like, is there an upgrade in NA? Like, Impact, maybe, but I don't think he's leaving TL. And so who do you get at that point in time? I mean, Broken Blade would be great, but G2 is not going to let him go. That's it. Basically, unless you go, try and get somebody from Korea. But even the Korean tops are not insane. Like, if FlyQuest can pick up Zeus off of his free agency at the end of this year, immense. They have the money to do it. But will they? That's an entirely different question, right?
By the way, I said it earlier as well. You have to look at that with Whipple is there's always a downside also to his game. Like, he is going to do these picks that don't work sometimes, and he is going to do ego picks. And by the way, he's always going to do it, Monty, where he's always going to go for fucking players in lane, mate. Whether it's necessary or not, they are all necessary to Whipple. You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, but that's the problem is, like, he wants to be the hero. Like, he has this fucking insane superhero complex that is both, you see, in his personality.
Syndrome. By the way, it's the same thing that we always said in CS about the guy Cadian. They don't just want to win. They want to be the one that made the play, that made the call, so when you win, it's like, they did it, And the downside of that is sometimes it's not appropriate for you to carry, or sometimes you have to let yourself be carried and things like that. And by the way, obviously, Bwipo, he's never, the joke is he's never done anything graciously. He's never lost graciously. He's never tweeted graciously. He's never done anything.
I brought this up on Power Spike, Thorin, but I've got to hear you get pissed at this because it's going to be so funny. So a couple hours after the game ends, he tweets this gem. Are you ready for it?
Go on, hit me with it.
It's tough to stay positive, but we made you guys believe. That was the goal.
Oh, fuck off. No, it wasn't. Winning was the goal. The goal was never the idea that we were like, oh, I actually believe it's possible. Oh, do you believe now? Well, now I can just lose. What are you talking about? And also, what I can't believe is this. You know what? I'm just going to say it, Monty. We were all laughing when Whipple made those unhinged stream comments where he was doing that shit where it was like, look, I actually like Merwin. He's just fucking subhuman trash on Italy. And we're like, what are you talking about? What the fuck? And go, do you have AIDS? Like, that seemed funny, right? Except he obviously was having some sort of mental health episode, right? I don't think he's like recovered in like a few weeks, boys, because some of the tweets he's been making recently are the craziest main character syndrome I've ever seen. He made a tweet, by the way, guys, where you can almost boil it down for real to like, guys, it's all right. I've had a personal conversation with Adam, so he's now allowed to play in the LEC. He's the best. Like, what are you talking? You don't like to fuck it. What are you talking? What does that even mean? You mentalist.
He's the GM of all of League of Legends, it turns out.
I know. He's like, guys, I've vetted him. He's apologized to me, so it's okay. He can now play League of Legends.
Him saying this is like Martin Luther King Jr. saying, like, the purpose of this was just to have a dream, guys. It wasn't to actually enact real change, in the civil rights movement. The purpose was the dream. It's like, of course, making you guys believe wasn't your goal. In fact, Whippo, no one said that was the goal the entire year you worked on FlyQuest. At 0 points in time in any team meeting did somebody sit down and say, Whippo, our goal is to make the fans believe. No, you plan to win at every possible point in time.
What he was trying to do, Monty, is he's trying to make out like this whole world's run was basically the film 300, and it was just to show that the God Emperor could bleed, to give the later... You have to understand, the Battle of Thermopylae comes next year, Monty, when the Western teams believe finally they can overcome the Koreans, and then they do beat them. This time couldn't happen. It was just about showing you the spirit of the fighting Greek in this particular scenario.
I mean, shout out to...
Yeah, go on.
Shout out to Leonidas. I mean, he delayed them so that the Athenian fleets could actually beat the Persians. Oh. So I guess what we're saying is that congrats, you didn't even delay them though. You just straight up lost, and then maybe somebody down the road is going to come and finish them off, but it won't be you.
And then what actually shows you that Whipple actually has the most crazy fucking main character syndrome I've ever seen, because everything he says is just like a humble brag to himself. Like when Masso, you see the tweet he did to Masso, where he basically just said like, sort of like, like you had a great, great worlds. Like the way you played allowed me to do the way I played allowed you to like.
You trusted me to do my thing and played every situation to the best of your ability. Only one AD has ever lived up to that before you. Be proud.
He's just implying like reckless there, we're assuming from like the old teams before, which I don't even get because by the way, upset was mega when he played with Whipple, but let's just ignore that. And then also it like, why do you have to be in it though? Like, it's like he just goes, listen, you played great. The way that you let me play great and win those games was fucking... Everything's just you, innit, Whipple? You're fucking
so
mental,
crazy.
mate. It's so mad. Why can't you just give like a genuine comment? You played great, Master. How about that? Just how about that? That's me. You know what? In the past, I've only seen one other guy that did that. Look, and also, even though he wasn't directly saying that, Monty, I do sort of think if you're going to be very uncharitable, like I choose to be, that tweet almost does say, like I said on Twitter, it's like he just goes, "Great tournament, kid. You're not as good as Reckless." Like that's my like really uncharitable reinterpretation of his compliment.
This would be insanely entertaining if he was Caps. But he's not Caps.
Of course, I know.
He's not Caps. Like if he was definitively the best player on his team, he's not even close to the best. Guys, at best, he's the third best player on his team. He is maybe the fifth best player on his team. Okay, at best third, probably fourth, possibly fifth. Right. And the funny thing is, he's saying this to a player who played better at Worlds than he did. Like, the reason they did well was because Masu was a fucking beast.
And also, not to be a nitpicky little cunt, but spoiler, I am going to do that for the rest of my life. I'll just say this. Did he let you do your thing on set?
What was your thing, in fact?
I know. What was your thing? I know. It's better than it. So, man, I love it, though.
So, yeah. I don't know, man. Like, the insanity of some of these tweets is...
Also, I'll just point this out, right? Remember, guys, even though, yes, in this series, inarguably, it's a fact, FlyQuest did win 2 single individual games against like a top Asian team. They didn't technically, Monty, win a match against any Asian teams at Worlds. They didn't win a BO1, they didn't win a BO3, they didn't win a BO5. That's a fact. Now, look, they did win 2 individual games, but they did not win a match. So all I'm saying is they did not win a match. So... But then again, maybe my mistake, Monty, was they were just making us believe. And the weirdest thing about that is that sounds like you're actually intentionally doing a KT roster. You're getting us excited, then subverting our expectations and ruining them. Why are you Ryan Johnson, Whipple? Why is that who you are? And also, even though it's a bit tactless, because yes, he does probably have mental health problems, the fact that people are calling him bipolar or whatever, it's like, fair play. You know what? Okay, it's fucked up. I have a dark sense of humor. I'll give you that one. That's pretty good. It's pretty good. I can't lie, Also, like, I do feel like there has to be some sort of meme at this point in time where it's like, this guy cannot fucking resist a Renekton angle, bro. He just can't, can he? This guy would pick Renekton over like the joke is if he actually had Sophie's choice, they're like, you kill your family member or you pick Renekton. He'd be like, well, sorry kids, but in lane, I am pretty sick on it. It's like, what are you talking about? I need to live with it. Listen, on this Renekton, I can do everything though. And
that's how Masu dies.
Yeah, there you go. That's how Game X. That's all the other games where you pick Renekton and go ball. It's all good. And also, he needs to learn there's a difference between your Renekton in LCS and at Worlds, bro. You're playing against Keen, you mad fuck. You are aware he's like the best top player there, along with Bin. You're playing against him. You're picking Renekton. By the way, imagine Keen like, oh my God, Whipple dropped in Renekton. I know, it's so mental, isn't it? I also do lucky hit. Listen, I'll just admit my biases, Monty. Even though it did work somehow, I do just hate that Urgot pick still works. Because that's another one where it's like people just don't know the champion, bro. Like he actually does just do like that fair death shit through the wall, like mad style and catch people. Like I hate it so much. It's like some solo cube shit. I hate it so much.
To be fair, he did a good job of being behind and then buying Black Cleaver, so his 2 AD carries would have armor shred.
There you go. He did do that.
I mean, arguably, Bwipo did win that game by TPing bot and giving Masu 2 kills in the early. Now, should that have happened? Probably not. Right? Probably that shouldn't have happened.
7D chess.
But it did happen.
Sure.
So I don't know. Like I look at some of these performances by GenG, and I think the story here is like great performance by FlyQuest, definitely more than anybody reasonably expected, but also like can GenG survive their side of the bracket is going to be the major question, because they didn't look good, right? And what I hate about GenG is that people are like, oh, GenG's choking, and you realize it's a different coaching staff, and 3 out of the 5 players have changed from last year, right, guys? It's really not the same team anymore. So Chovy didn't have a good performance. Maybe you chalk it up to him, but it looked to me like their draft strategy coming in was a little wonky. They looked rusty. People have said having 2 weeks, between your last game, if you 3-0 and the first one here, does make it hard to like keep the pressure on as a roster, because when there's such a long break, it's hard to like keep yourself like focused and highly motivated and in the grind day to day. Maybe that was a part of it. Maybe we'll see a better performance moving on. The teams that have gone 3-0 in the we only have the 2 Swiss stages at Worlds to look at, but the teams that have gone 3-0 have been slow starting. They have been slow starting. So perhaps that's part of it as well. LNG lost.
Yeah, the joke would be, because of when they all qualified, GenG just spent the last week and a half just practicing as Hanwha Life and LNG, so you saw how that went. Maybe they weren't the best teams, it turns out, guys. Maybe they indeed were not.
So, yeah, I mean, who knows if they even took some time off? Like, I have no idea. It's definitely, if you're trying to, like, min-max your performance, maybe you do want a day or 2 break there just to kind of take it easy, so you don't burn out. Anyway, I think it was good. It's probably going to be overrated. I don't anticipate that this performance is necessarily going to be repeatable for anybody. So perhaps a bit of false hope.
And especially in the playoffs, there's so much time. The next series, you've done a full reset. Like, by the way, let's talk about the other exciting series, Hanwha and BLG, because there's another example, Monty, of why I have a different perspective. I seem to be alone in esports in this sense. When I analyze tournaments, I don't overrate individual form as in like as teams in a tournament. Like BLG, I told people this. All I cared about is just get out of Swiss. Once you look dodgy early on, now it's just survival. I don't give a fuck what you look like. And by the way, they actually look decent at the end anyway. Just get out of Swiss, and then you got the full reset before we go to the BO5s. Also, the way you can draft in a BO5 is so different. Like BLG, in the playoffs was night and day compared to the team that played in the fucking Swiss, man. They was way better. Way better.
I mean, clearly part of this was that they swapped jungles in the middle of Swiss.
I mean, it took a while to warm him up, but yeah, it worked by the end. You can see why they did it. Yeah.
So I think part of it was when you're actually making a substitution of a player, especially one that hadn't really played with you in the last split, that it's going to take a while to like reintegrate that player into your roster. Part of it was that On had been playing really badly. We talked about him being a possible like Dade Award winner should they lose to Hanwha Life, and for him to continue to look bad. I think he did actually have some very good games in this series, and I think it's hard to award a player a Dade Award if they make it to the semifinals at Worlds, even if they are bad, because they can't be. I mean, at a certain point, guys, you just can't be that bad and make semis of Worlds.
Yes.
Like, you just can't be.
I mean, it would almost infer why were you a candidate, because if you were that pivotal to your team and you played like total shit, how did he make semis? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And he did play better. Part of it is Bin is obviously really just an incredible
killing everyone, mate. Do you know what's hilarious? There was an interview, I think it might even be on like LOL esports, where they just asked each player of like some big name players at Worlds, what was your favorite meta, right? And you can imagine, I think Faker maybe even said like season 3 or something, and then some of the other people said like the last few years. Bin had the most baller answer, Monty. He just literally said, I don't care. They're all good metas for me. Because he's the guy who just plays whatever the fuck he wants, bro. He just plays everything smart. He would just play Jackson any meta, wouldn't he? And you can see he's just a Chad. I love him, mate. He's actually just a Chad.
So, I also think that if you look at some of the performances, we talked about this heading into Worlds. Like I know Nymeris talked about this a bunch of times, which is like BLG wasn't the cleanest team in best of threes. They frequently would lose game ones. Is this format a hindrance to BLG's playing style, combined with their instability of their roster, combined with some underperformances from their players? And they are a team that adapts really well. They would start by losing game 1, and by game 3, they would be completely smashing people. And the longer this series went on, you can see how they are adapting, right? The series is probably the most dynamic in terms of drafts of the best of fives that we saw, because it was like, ooh, game one, Knight's trying to play Ahri. Knight's Ahri is legendary, 80+% win rate, and here's Zeka's legendary Sylas, right?
Yep.
And we kind of see like, oh shit, like maybe we do not want to play the Ahri into the Sylas, right? And we got to see the reverse of that in game 3 where Zeka's attempting it. And then Zeka's back on the Sylas, but here comes the mid Galio, like as a possible counter pick that Knight's playing and actually winning the game with. So it really did feel like, especially Knight was like testing the waters here, testing various different matchups. And, Hanwha, they didn't play very well. Thorin basically solo lost game 2.
He had some bad ints, yeah.
But this is the thing about Thorin. He did this in the finals. It's like Thorin just has one fucking incredibly lousy game in a best of 5. And it makes it so hard for Hanwha to win because he basically just loses you a game in a best of 5. So you just have to count that he's going to do that. And so then you just, the onus is on you to win 3 out of the remaining 4 games. Like, that's ridiculous. Like, he is... Unfortunately, the problem with Korea right now is there aren't any good tops to replace him, but he himself is not capable of playing at this level. That's it. Like when it comes to this level of competition, he becomes a liability. And even, in the final game of this series, Hanwha has a composition with Gnar, Poppy, Sylas, MF, and Rel, where they have to protect MF because she's the majority of the damage on this roster. And is Delight or Doran peeling for this MF? No, of course they're not, right? And there's not really an excuse because if you're playing Sylas into Kindred and Galio, you can steal either of those ults to help keep your AD carry alive. I think one of the things that we will see as a result of this series, and one thing that BLG and other teams are starting to figure out, is that it is very important to take an AD carry in the first round of the draft. Because what happened was Billy was taking that ADC in the first round of the draft, and then they were banning ADCs in the second round of the draft, and then we end up with fucking Zeri and MF for Viper. And it's like, MF isn't inherently bad. I think it was better in summer when we were seeing LPL run some of these Wombo comps. But like against these dive compositions, against Jax, Rakan, Kai'Sa, Galio, like it's very hard to stay alive. And sure, she can do well in lane, but it's if she doesn't have summoners up, she's just dead in these team fights, especially because Hanwha was playing badly around the MF and badly around the Peel. Is Zeri the best option? Like maybe the Twitch ban by Billy was like super prescient, but because, the Ahri Nocturne Twitch combo is what GenG used to beat Hanwha in Swiss. And so it was effectively used. And maybe Billy was like, hey, you're trying to do that thing that GenG did to you. No Twitch. It was a good ban, I think. They also took out the Kai'Sa, same shit. The Kalista was banned earlier. And the other thing that GenG was doing was playing Nocturne Kalista. So with all of these AD carry bans going out in like the second round of bans in the last, each team gets the 2 bans in the second round, I think it's really hard to play a lot of these ADs because if you are Billy, you are going to ban Xayah if you're playing a dive composition, and then you end up playing a low mobility AD like MF into dive, so you have to take the Xayah earlier, basically, or a Kai'Sa or something like that. But these picks are often not Kai'Sa Ezreal is just going to be banned. It's going to be banned by the time you get around to picking them. So more and more teams, I think, are going to switch to prioritizing ADs earlier in the draft because right now the pool is getting so pinched, and it just doesn't feel like pinching top lane or pinching jungle or pinching support is as much of an option right now.
I do think in that game 4, like the dual grand entrance play was like fucking one of the coolest things we've seen in like a world's team fight.
It was fun,
didn't it? Yeah. Because that was a mega hype game. You did it on your like bangers only, didn't you? Did you do game 4?
I did all the games. Yeah, I did. I've VOD reviewed every game of
Worlds. I thought that was a mega match. You can rewatch that. It's got some real replay
look,
value.
the team fights are fine, but I just don't think like Doran or Delight are doing their jobs in those team fights. And that's a big problem. So Bilibili is a better team.
What sort of sick fucking moment is it, Monty, that for Peanut to get eliminated from Another Worlds on Poppy in a quarterfinals?
I mean, I hate it because like Peanut on Poppy is my favorite player and champion combination in the game. Like it's the games I look forward to the most. If you're like, oh, Peanut's on Poppy, like that gets me going more than you saying any other player on any other champion. But I mean, like what's going on with Hanwha's draft here? Why are we picking Gnar? Like, can't we pick Gragas into Jax in lane and also Kindred? You know, doesn't that provide us more reliable peel for the MF? I think like Hanwha was really struggling. Like there was a disconnect both between the comps they were picking and the way they were playing these comps, as well as just the champions I think they were selecting themselves and the priority they had. I think, you know, this is one of those things where sometimes we see an evolution of the meta between Swiss and the next stage, or groups in the next stage of Worlds. We saw that last year. T1 was not spectacular in Swiss last year, and they really came alive in the bracket stage. And Hanwha, you know, Bilibili, maybe the same thing is going to be true of Bilibili, right? Like Bilibili could absolutely win the world championship. They're one of the favorites coming in. They look much more like themselves now. Elk had some fucking amazing games in this series.
Oh, sure.
Jun, you know, when you put him on some of these carry champions, looks great. Like he got to pull out his Wukong, which is one of his kind of like bread and butter champs, alongside his obviously like very legendary Kindred. So I don't know. Like I feel as though when we look at Hanwha,
I mean, by the way, isn't Bin just the best top player at this point in time?
Yes.
I mean, we can get later to TS, but 369 can shut the fuck up. It's just Bin. It just is. It's just Bin all the time, isn't it?
I mean, especially because I wouldn't say as I have been saying, the Korean tops I think are not very strong right now as a whole in the LCK. But Bin is
and when Keen picks, he's picking a Cassandra and stuff like that to play more for the team. You know, he's not trying to be like the Jax player all the time like this. You know,
no. And so Bin's carry pressure is obviously the highest of any
it's
top
insane.
laner.
He really does do that shit where even when he doesn't have the resource, he just still plays like he does. He's actually like an old throwback in that sense. He actually really is like the old school tops.
Great.
By the way, the other thing as well to just shade in is, guys, because of the FlyQuest series, you're all still like traumatized. You all still think GenG can get eliminated. Literally, Chovy and Knight are in the semis, boys. We just need them to get to the final. It's almost happening. It's almost happening. We almost got Chovy and Knight in the finals. It could happen.
I know.
It's going to happen. Right? I'm going to say it's going to happen. It's going to happen. You're going to happen. They're going to play the final.
That is the expected result. Like even if you take into account GenG's rather lackluster performance, I think that's unlikely to continue. But
T1's the best pick me up they have, mate. Come on.
T1 is powering up. You know, the crazy thing would just be,
if you have to realize, Monty, if somehow T1 wins that GenG series and goes to the finals, this is just like that shit.
What if it's just a T1 Weibo rematch from last year?
Well, this is the problem. If somehow T1 actually beats GenG, when on paper there's no reason they should, GenG's better, they've won the last billion times they played. This is like that shit where we actually used to think back in the day, like, at least Tom Brady will just be stuck on those 3 wins from the defensive era. And then he just kept stealing all those Super Bowls, like, oh, fucking hell. Then all the fans were like, now he has to be the GOAT, Monty. Like, yep, I'm out. I'm out of this. I can't do it anymore. Because you have to say, actually, you know what? Should we talk about the TST1 series?
Yeah, we will.
Because isn't this just like 2 sides of a narrative that has sadly played out again, which is one, you have to give it up to Faker, but T1 in general. They are one of the most clutch teams ever, this lineup of players. They're unbelievable. Meanwhile, TES, I don't know if I've ever seen a team that can be that good, that is this fragile. Like, the second they actually do get cracked, their whole mental goes, and it's insane, isn't it? It's actually crazy. Because they just go from so good to so bad. It's crazy.
I just think it's funny that they did nothing in this series. And, like, they actually looked like they had just given up on Worlds by game 3. Like, they just looked like they were just not interested in playing any more League of Legends this year.
That's mad, isn't it?
It was wild. Before we dive into this game, though, we got one more sponsor for you guys today. That is, of course, Turtle Beach. Shout out to Turtle Beach. They make, you may have heard of them back in the day, but they're still making great headphones. I am actually wearing some Turtle Beach headphones right now. These are the Atlas Airs, which are the open back headphones that they make. And they are wireless. I know I'm using a wire. You can also use a wire with them because I have to have this plugged into my mic for side tone so I can hear myself. But they are, as far as I know, Thorin, the only wireless open back headphones in the world. So if you like open back headphones, which do provide like a broader soundscape, generally better sound quality, obviously noise isolation, maybe not the best, but if you want noise isolation, you can check out their Stealth 600 series, which are fully wireless, like 80-hour batteries on these. Amazing. I've been using them with consoles, Switch. They use Bluetooth and wireless. You can use these wireless, same functions, either wireless or with Bluetooth for your consoles. They are great, guys. This one comes with a detachable microphone as well. I have detached it for the time being because obviously I'm using this. They also make mice and keyboards because they bought Rockcat. And I was really happy to see that because the Rockcat Cone mouse is actually my favorite mouse ever, guys. And this is the wireless Cone 2 Air. And if you have bigger hands and you want a wider mouse, this is amazing. So definitely recommend their products. Check all of it out. Battery life is crazy. Audio quality is extremely good on a lot of their headsets, right? Various different price points for you guys. So very, very useful, especially if you're switching between your PC and a PS5 or an Xbox or your Switch or your phone to listen to everything. It just makes it super easy to use one headset for all of these various things. So thank you very much to Turtle Beach. You guys can get the ultimate immersive gaming experience with Turtle Beach today. For a limited time only, head to turtlebeach.com. And of course, use code SUMMONING for 10% off your entire order. That's 10% off your order at turtlebeach.com with promo code SUMMONING. So great quality. Really been enjoying mine. I use them all the time. Variety of different like closed back. Like I said, these are the open back Atlas Airs. There's something for you there. If you need a new keyboard, they offer mechanical keyboards. If you need mice, if you want a flight stick, if you're huge into F1, the video game, they have complete like driving rigs. It is crazy what they have. So yeah, lots and lots of awesome products over there. So be sure to check out turtlebeach.com. Thank you very much. So T1 versus Top Esports. Clearly this was hyped up, right? It's a rematch of the Esports World Cup final. It's something that people, I think, really wanted to see. And like you say, Top Esports just completely collapsed, right? Under the pressure. This is the team that we thought would be in the finals in LPL summer playoffs. They didn't make it there. They lost to Weibo. And they just didn't do anything in this entire series. And I think they got basically dog walked around the map by T1. Top Esports basically grouped for every single objective in the entire series. And T1 just dictated the pace of the game. They said, we're not going to fight you there. And Top Esports would just continue to press for objectives. Did they get poked down to almost 0 HP? Yeah, we're still going to fight that and lose, right? Are we going to use TPs to get into this engagement and T1's not going to be there? They're just going to walk away and like cross map instead? Yep, that's definitely going to happen. Are we going to try Barons when there's Carrier's Bard that can just ult from halfway across the map and get our team in position in order to stop you from taking Baron? Of course. And, Cream, despite having, his MSI was rocky, his EWC was better, his summer season was really good when he could play a lot of AD champions. His Silas is legendary, but it didn't show up in this series. And we just saw like Faker pull out this Galio counter that's been coming around, right? Even the final game of this series, Carrier's Pyke is shit. That's a shit pick in that situation, guys. Like Pyke is not good. And like the question is, now that they're up 2-0, is Carrier just picking this so he can get a world skin if he wins again? That's my question. Seriously. It's true.
He really wants the Pyke world skin.
I mean, he used to be like a Pyke one trick. So I think, this champion is near and dear to his heart, but it's not a good pick in this game. And I think they believed like Top Esports was playing so badly and that they were up 2-0 that they could actually kind of get away with it in this game. But it's not an effective pick. It really, waned in importance as the game went on. But because 369 is playing some like wacky ass AD split push Kedden, it doesn't matter. right? But there was nothing really coordinated about top esports in this series. It was just a complete top to bottom collapse. 369 played miserably.
By the
I mean,
way, there used to be that thing where Doran, I mean, it sort of doesn't really do that much now, but when on GenG, he used to always just beat Zeus, even though, like, on paper, they were supposed to be like, Zeus supposed to be way better than Doran. Bro, 369 just loses to Zeus every time he plays him. He just becomes like half as good. It must be like the one player that's in his head or something. Also, you look at this series for T1, like, by the way, you can definitely call out Jackie Love and 369. These guys would not have good series at all. In fact, they look shit. But on the side of T1, all the carries looked good. Like, by the way, Faker obviously played well. Like, fucking Galio looked really good. But, mate, not only this, like, obviously, Gumayushi couldn't even be killed in the whole series. Like, this was a dream series for T1.
Yeah, I mean, they won game 2 they were 15-0 in kills. It's outrageous. And, I think what we saw in LCK Summer Playoffs that was disturbing about T1 wasn't that Faker's champion pool was bad. I mean, that's a meta thing that's going to come around, and he clearly has to a certain degree. Is Faker the most meta-proof mid laner at this tournament? No, but he has enough champions and enough depth that it's not really a problem at the current point in time. But what was really disturbing is that their coordination was off. One player would be going in while the rest of them were going out. They looked like the unit we know them to be. If we talk about over the last 3 years, T1 strengths, pick compositions, snap engages, very quick decisions, clever map play and objective control, sneaky barons that they shouldn't get. All of these things were going wrong for them at the end of summer. They were making bad baron calls. One player would engage, the rest of them would be backing off. Keria was inting. Like, Keria didn't have a good summer split. He was amazing in this series. His Rakan game in game number 2 was mind-bogglingly good. His engages were absolutely incredible, right? They were.
By the way, during
tier.
that series, fucking Delight, who was already eliminated for Hanwha Life, was like, "Oh yeah, that Rakan shot is pretty. Could I play that sometime? Could I ever have a go on that? I'm pretty fucking good myself, but my bad, guys. Anyway, I'm just going home anyway. I'm swimming home. All good."
To be fair, he's also very good at Rel. But yes, I hear what you're saying. Like, it would have been nice to have seen him on Rakan, in the series.
At least one game
that they played against BLG. The nice thing about Rakan is it also prevents the other team from playing Braum, which is important in this meta. Because it's like, basically if it deters like Ashe Braum without having to actually ban Braum. So picking that Rakan does actually have value, especially early on. Anyway, T1, I love the fact that they're using Caitlyn. It probably gives them more versatility. We talked about like the AD pool being pinched a little bit, and so Gumayushi being on Xayah and Caitlyn probably feels really good. Now, the downside to this, Thor, is you look at Gumayushi and you're like, this guy ain't so great at Ezreal and Kai'Sa, right? And is that really going to hurt? Because at some point in time, even though he does have alternatives, if teams just feel free to leave up Ezreal and Kai'Sa and then ban his champs, is he going to play them? Because he doesn't look good on Ezreal, guys. He is not a good Ezreal player.
Obviously, he has to get past GenG, but if he made it to the final, that would be very interesting against Elk, right? They'd have a very interesting bot lane draft for sure.
Yeah, look, Pays, even though he had a bad series versus FlyQuest, his champion pool is just better in this meta than Guma's is. He is just more suited to playing Ziggs, to playing Ezreal, to playing Kai'Sa. And these are the power picks that we're seeing right now. And there are still questions, I think, about T1. The Yone, sure, Zeus can play it. Is that the optimal place to play it? Faker's not a very good Yone player. I don't know. Like, T1 was also on the red side for this entire series, and they were banning out Yone, Aurora, and Skarner. That leaves no room for pocket bans. Are they good with Aurora? That's a question. Like, if we look at it, like, they're not playing Weibo, but Xiaohu has looked great on Aurora, and GenG has at least played Aurora top in multiple games.
By the way, as you say, if you're going to ban like that and you have no pocket pick, well, here's an obvious one in the next series. That means you can't do the Twitch ban.
Yeah.
There's no space.
I mean, you could do it in the second round of the draft, but is that really your priority, right? That's the question. Or the Twitch could get grabbed earlier potentially, and do you have a lane counter to that, especially if Guma's champion pool is super pinched?
That's the question, right?
I'm I'm not sure that T1 has a lot of advantages on the red side of this draft if they feel like they have to ban these 3 champions. Because you like the problem is for T1, you just can't let GenG have Skarner, Aurora, or Yone. You can't do that. You cannot do that. So you either have to leave them all up, and you have to be good at playing them yourselves to kind of get to filter through to you. But the other issue is, okay, so let's say Chovy plays Yone. What is Faker going to play? Faker's not a good smolder, guys. He's not. Right? And we know that Chovy is happy playing into other AD mids with Yone. He's happy playing into Tristan. He's happy playing into Xiaohu's Lucian. So I don't know, man. Like, Faker has not been prioritizing the Orianna at all. Maybe that's something he's potentially saving. The Ahri has not looked good into Sylas. So if he early picks the Ahri and they don't ban the Sylas, what happens then? I don't think that Chovy's going to prioritize the Sylas and just let Faker play Galio. That doesn't seem something that Chovy would want to do. I have questions. I have a lot of questions. So in spite of T1's like really good performance, I think we also have to keep in mind that they were against an opponent who they just didn't show up at all. Like I
will say though, it is very impressive to have the same 5-man lineup and 3 years in a row make at least the semis. Like, even if they go out now, that's still insane. 3 years in a row, exact same lineup too. That's bonkers.
Yes. Yeah, they've made top 3 at every single international tournament, because you have to remember it's not 3-4 because they made the last 2 world finals, and they've made top, now that we have double elimination at MSI, they've made top 3 at MSI. So they have literally placed 3rd place or higher at every international event they've gone to, even the bullshit one like Esports World Cup. So
true. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. Their floor has been very high. The floor of this team has been very high, which is why I didn't write them off coming into this. And I said, they're still going to be, they always find a way to get their shit together at these events. And they have enough uniqueness to their roster that they will leverage their strengths eventually, even if it's off meta.
And by the way, I'll even give them credit as well. I do think, as you've just described, they do have certain positions where they are somewhat limited in what they can pick, mid and AD, for example. But actually, the way they actually adapt to those limitations is very respectable, Monty. I hate when I see Western teams, or even, like, by the way, even top esports will do this sometimes, like, when they'll just put, like, very good players on champions that are just meta, but not good for them. Like, T1 doesn't force that. Like, they will try and find some other angle, or they understand we just can't play this, so they won't play it. The amount of teams that still play the things they're bad on is crazy. It's a fair play to coaching staff. Seem to be doing a pretty good job this time around.
Yeah. So yeah, I actually just don't think there's that much to say about T1 top esports, because the series was terrible, and it's not because T1
would have been nice to have
badly.
seen a good series, wouldn't it?
It would have been nice to have seen a good series, or T1 literally be challenged at all times. They basically had control of over every one of these games from like the starting minute to the last minute of these 3 matches, because they were the ones choosing not to take fights. They were just like, well, maybe we have some sums down, or we have some ults down, or we're not strong yet. We're just going to cross map. It's fine. And top esports, they did not force their will upon T1 at any point in this series. It was wild to watch.
This is what's such a bummer, because the reason why I was so sure top esports would win this series, because I thought the whole point is you're just going to play with no respect. You're going to treat T1 like they're shit and just go fucking ham. And by the way, you have a bunch of really mechanically skilled players on top esports. Like, that could have worked, but as you say, they played so tentatively. It was pathetic. They just played like pussies.
Yeah, I think they just wanted to go home, man. Maybe their shot calling just dries up in these high pressure situations. It's sad, because Tien was probably the best jungler in Swiss.
Smurfing, yeah.
He's great.
He's killing it.
I know. Mako, a lot of questions around him during summer. I think he looked a lot better in Swiss. Like, for this team to go out with such a whimper is a massive bummer. Also, it's a massive bummer to, or would be a massive bummer if we had double elimination, because FlyQuest could probably beat this top esports team if they're going to play like that.
Well, yeah, for sure.
And for all the talk about single eliminations, much more exciting.
What do you think of that 369 Kennen pick on game 3?
Oh, it's terrible.
Like, what do you think of that?
It's terrible. Like, why are we doing AD split push Kennen?
I know, we're trying to pick you up as like the best top player in the world, you fucking rat. Why are you picking Kennen? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing that?
369 didn't even get like the breathe glow up, the breathe or Zika world's glow up. He just, he wasn't bad, but he also wasn't amazing during the summer split. And now this is what we get, which is just him completely shitting the bed. Very, very disappointing performance from him. All right, we can talk about LNG versus Weibo a little bit.
Now, this one is funny, Monty, because what's funny is I actually got, listen, on the BLG one, I told people on the last episode, I'm just in the stands. I just hoped BLG would get it. That was just hope alone. The Weibo one, look, I'm never going to say this lineup is actually good, Monty. They aren't. But I'll tell you what, they are bizarrely sort of, I wouldn't even say they're truly clutch either. I would say it's more like they are, you know, that dreaded term, but it applies to this team. So they are just scrappy, Monty. Weibo Gaming is like they will just take these mad engagements and skirmishes and fights. I don't even think they know that they're going to win them or how they're going to win them. They just take these crazy. I mean, the joke is in the actual series that the clip everyone was loving of Danny, right? That guy, the coach. You know where he turns away because he's like, well, we've won that fight, and as he turns away, and Scout goes in and does that like triple because his team just pushes, and then the joke is he turns around and literally says to the camera, "She bow," which is like bitch in Korean or whatever guys are like.
Sibo. It was just like fucking great. It was so funny. I was laughing so hard on my stream.
You know what I mean, Monty? Like, even they don't know if they're going to get the edge on, hold it or whatever. It's every game is on a knife edge when these guys play. It's so ridiculous, isn't it?
I do want to credit Danny though, because I think he's been unfairly maligned by a lot of people. Now, you know, all right, clearly maybe his T1 10-man roster experiment wasn't good, right? That was pretty harebrained, I think. But honestly, his time on D+ Kia, he was cooking a lot of time on D+. It's just his players were too stupid to use his comps. Like they had bad shot calling. And I think he would find very weird and very, you remember his Heimerdinger garbage, guys? Like that was actually good. But I do want to credit him because I think he really got an excellent read on LNG in this series that not many people have talked about. So Weiwei as a player is not somebody who actually was playing a lot of AP jungle champions during summer when like obviously those were super big picks. Now the counterpoint to that is obviously like Tarzan may be the best like brand jungle in the world this year. He was absolutely immense. And sure, like, you know, some of these nerfs, especially to Zyra, you know, have come out. But I'm looking at Weiwei right now. Zyra was his third most played champion, but he was 2-4 on the pick, right? This is not a guy who was excelling on a lot of these AP picks, even if he was grabbing them, right? He mostly played Sejuani. Played Nidalee, had a slightly above 50% win rate on that champion, had some Karthus games, but for the most part, I think he realized that he could just back LNG into a corner and like force very weird situations for LNG. So for example, like in the final game of this series, they give Scout Yone, and to be clear, LNG was the best Yone team, I think, in LPL in summer. Scout was amazing on this pick. So you understand, you're like, oh, okay, so they're giving this up. But because their bans are Rumble and Silas and Ziggs, and you might be like, well, not many other teams are banning Ziggs right now. The answer is because they figured out how to back LNG into 0 AP compositions.
By the way, that Jin pick also was a bomber in this.
That's what I'm saying. Mate. So, but it's the same shit that happened, Thorin, as in the Hanwha series. Weibo and BLG realized that you should early pick ADs. Right. And by doing that, because look at what they banned in the second round of the draft. They banned Kai'Sa and Ashe. So now we've banned Ziggs, Kai'Sa, and Ashe. Okay. So they also banned the Rumble, which Zika had been using. So you force them to first pick the Yone. So now they have to find AP damage somewhere else. They can't get Gala because the Ziggs is gone. Weiwei's not a very good AP jungler. He's not Tarzan who will just like flex into brand. And Zika is playing Renekton. So you end up with a comp that is Yone, Jin, Renekton, Sejuani, and Nautilus. And at this point in time, you could just build armor. You know what I mean? And like Danny was like low key cooking. He was low key cooking.
You think he like basically like draft Yu-Gi-Oh them there, like tricked them into pick what he wanted, right?
Right. And this is an example of what happens when you leave the Aurora and the Yone up, and you say, all right, Xiaohu, you maybe are the best performing Aurora player at this tournament. You can play this into the Yone, and we expect you to contain the Yone and contain Scout. Meanwhile, we're going to have the easiest path to itemization of all time. right? And to the point where like even Light's building Shojin, but like Tarzan is just building super tanky on Maokai, like lock it into Randuin's. We have a Frozen Heart, which obviously has insane value, against this compensation on Breathe. So the longer this game goes on, the harder it becomes for LNG to actually deal damage to your composition. And I think, Danny is another instance of Danny like really doing a good job. And Danny is smart. He just has to have players that understand what he's trying to do, right? And this is one of those
saying there's someone called Danny who was mistreated by past people and the community even maybe, and you just have to understand his limitations, and then he can actually shine.
Exactly, very good.
In this case, he's been starved of attention or credit. Also, by the way, I did, when the people do banter, Monty, even though the plebs normally are shit at banter, every now and then the consensus generating machine that is Reddit comes up with a good one. I thought they had a good one for this one, Monty, which is the joke said, this is 2 worlds in a row where Tarzan beats LNG in the quarterfinal. Okay. You know what? Well done. Well done. You win that one. That's pretty good. Whoever came up with that, that's pretty good. Also, by the way, that is still the move of the year, isn't it, Monty? Like, remember, he didn't play spring. They brought him into this team. They looked way better immediately. They qualified a Worlds, like fucking like they go to the final of LPL, and now they're in the top 4. He's in the top 4 for the first time ever. Like, this, what a fucking globe for Tarzan. I bet he was always a good player, guys. Just now you see the real Tarzan. Yeah. Now he's actually unlocked it a bit.
Yeah, I mean, he's been performing well at Worlds too. And he was absolutely just bitch slapping people in LPL in summer.
Yes.
Like, it was crazy how dominant he was a lot of the time. Does this, the question for fans is, does this give us a good semifinal?
Probably not. Don't they just get clapped?
I mean,
surely.
All you have to know, if you guys didn't watch the LPL finals, I'm asking you, go back, watch game 3, watch On completely run it down on Bard, and Billy still somehow wins that game.
Yes.
And ask yourself, can Weibo win a best of 5? Dom on Power Spike, he was like, it's not impossible. And I was like, I don't know about that.
I think it would require BLG to also play really badly, in my opinion.
Which they have at Worlds, to be fair. Sure. They have underperformed, and maybe Weibo is overperforming now. Like, Breathe has been amazing, right? Breathe has been amazing. If you would have to say, okay, so why wasn't Weibo that good? Xiaohu was abysmal in summer. He was really bad. Xiaohu had a mega series against LNG.
Some really good games, yeah.
Yeah, so Xiaohu has definitely like woken up again. Light has been very underrated, I think, by people. He's easily one of the top 380 carries at this event so far, if not number 1. I think if you look at the totality of Worlds so far, you could make a case that Light has been the best performing ADC. So for Weibo, it feels like they're peaking at the right time. So perhaps they can change things, but honestly, like, I've seen BLG like play super bad and then still win games against Weibo. So that gives me pause.
By the way, on paper, we do have a fucking insane mid lane pool for the semis, Monty. It is fucking Xiaohu, Knight, Faker, and Chovy. That's like some fucking Hall of Famer shit there.
There's a real chance that is the best mid lane pool in top 4 ever.
Why not? Yeah, especially for the names and the resume and decorate. Yeah, it's insane.
I mean, literally all those players should be in the Hall of Fame for League of Legends, and none of them have even retired yet. But they're obviously, like, all of them are shoo-ins.
And you've even got that angle where you've got the old masters of Xiaohu and Faker, and then you've got the young dogs of Chovy and Knight who are in their prime now, in theory, ready to win. So yeah, it's mega, isn't it?
Yeah,
I do think though people are reaching too far. Like, it'd probably be T1 Weibo again. That's the least likely one. Come on, guys, that's the least likely one. I know you're fucking but Worlds is always the same. Like, look, I don't know why it is. Is it rigged? Is this WWE? Am I managed to fool watching a fake sport thinking it's real? I don't know at this point in time. But in a sane world, it won't be T1 against Weibo, will it? Come on.
I hope not. I mean, I think what we deserve, and I think it's important to the game and the popularity of the esport. Like, sure, would Faker being in a final drive the most viewership? Obviously,
of course,
right? But is it better for the game to be able to start to actually write the legends of Chovy and Knight, who are going to be around with us for many years, and to have that matchup play out on the world stage and one of them finally win the title, I think that is more important for the longevity of the game.
Yes.
And it's certainly just objectively a better matchup at this point in history.
Oh, by the way, if you just cynically wanted viewership, you obviously want it to be BLG T1 in the final. That will just get all the viewership in the world. But if you want the best match, you probably should want GenG BLG. That will be the fucking banger, won't it? And you'll have that scenario where we're guaranteed one of Chovy and Knight wins the title. So it'll be like the crowning moment of the last few years.
Yeah, plus you get Bin versus Keen, which are, the stylistic matchup is super interesting in that case, right? Keen much more of the weak side, old reliable, does his job top laner versus the Bin, the ultra flashy lane dominant carry player. There's a lot of good stuff there. I mean, honestly though, I think we would be in for a less bad final than last year, even if it was Weibo T1.
Oh no, for
because
sure.
Weibo just felt massively fraudulent heading into last finals, and T1 it really just felt like they were going to dominate them, and indeed they did. Whereas this iteration of Weibo, you can at least see with Xiaohu performing a lot better, and then with Breathe performing super well alongside Tarzan and Light, who have just been good all summer, that this is a roster that could actually maybe contend for a title.
Oh.
Unlikely. They're definitely the tier list of teams. You can say probably maybe you say BLG is better because GenG played badly versus FlyQuest, and you ignore BLG's really lackluster Swiss stage, and you say, well, GenG's worse now, even though they dominated Swiss. I would say, me personally, in terms of most to least likely to win Worlds, probably GenG, BLG, T1, Weibo, in that order.
Here's the question. We didn't you talked a little bit about the draft, but we have to just specifically spell it out. T1 against GenG. What was Monty's thoughts?
Well, I don't think that a lot of Faker's champion pool is really going to be banned, because I think Chovy's just kind of happy playing whatever into him. But like I said, my questions are really what happens. There are so many picks you leave up for GenG if you ban out the Yone, Aurora, and Skarner. And on the other side, let's say GenG's on red side and they ban none of them. Are you really afraid of T1 picking the Yone first? You're going to know it's in top before you pick R5. So, and you're going to anticipate that anyway if you're keen. So honestly, GenG on red side here just might be the play, because you're going to force them into playing Yone or Aurora, and you're going to get maybe that and Skarner back, or maybe you force T1 to ban those out on the blue side, which then opens up your ability to counterpick with pocket picks on the red side. So I think T1's champion pool issues in this meta, whether it's at AD with Ezreal, possibly the Ziggs, whether it's, the Yone Aurora problems that they might have, I think that's where this is going to come back to haunt them. And top esports was just not very punishing. So they have to have T1 would have to have some answers, I think, in the draft that I just don't think they have the depth currently to do. And I think if GenG is smart, they probably prioritize red side. So.
Yeah, but Faker.
Faker does have
that analysis. Why are you doing all that analysis? And just look at Leaguepedia. Faker will probably win.
I mean, the truth
chalky. He'll probably just chalk again, like he does every world.
The really annoying thing about Faker is that he makes the play when it matters. They should have lost that game to JDG last year, and he comes in and makes the play onto Ruler with the Azir.
Can't lie. This would actually be some Brady level tilt if in again it's like a 1-1 series, Monty, and in game 3 of GenG T1, Faker, he doesn't have to do anything else. If he just does one Emperor's Divide that wins a team fight, he's doing it again, and then that'd be the worst show.
But it'll
be intolerable.
I mean, it is annoying that he's just an incredibly clutch player, and he always has been. And we count that as annoying now, but it is part of his identity and what makes him spectacular as a player.
He just is the most clutch player ever. I'll give him that part. Yeah, I think that one's easy. I mean, that's probably the most noticeable thing about his game.
And that's what people love, because they'll forget all the games that he loses and looks bad in, because the only thing they remember is the fucking Azir shuffle.
No, the joke is, people might know this reference, right? In the game Quake, the 1v1 series, one of my favorite players is a player who also had incredible longevity. It's the Russian player Cooler. And I can tell you, there was times when he wasn't actually the best dueler. But the thing is, because he was insanely clutch, Monty, in some ways that was even better, because what would happen is he'd be down in a game, like 2 kills at the end of the game, and then he'd just pull some like insane trap play and get back in. And in some ways, Monty, that's more satisfying than if he'd just been winning by 3 kills and didn't lose, like it's actually cooler that he sort of put himself in danger to then in the same way. Here's the league reference for people. One of the reasons why we all got to enjoy Doublelift's mechanics is because he made so many stupid boneheaded decisions that he had to mechanically kite his way out of situations he never should have been in and should have just flashed probably earlier, so that in some ways, it can actually work in your favor, because it does make the storyline way more hype, obviously. Because also notice the difference is, in the past, when Faker was clutch, that's like when he was already the best and other people pushed him. Now it's like he come in always expecting he should lose to all these people. Like all these other Midlands on paper should beat him. But then if he pulls it out in some epic fashion, it makes it kind of cool in a way. Like the narrative's just super satisfying.
And he does make epic plays, and he is super clutch. And it's not like GenG doesn't have problems right now, right? Chovy had a bad series. Pays and Lehans had terrible series versus FlyQuest. Pays did not have a good final. Like that, if not for Pays, GenG probably would have won Summer Finals. He threw game 1, and he played badly in a lot of the other games as well. Yes. Pays is potentially not the best player in these kind of super high pressure games that we're seeing. And when they're really pushed and he's the one who has to perform, he hasn't done that. Like there are risks here, and T1 is a good team, and T1, like we said, never failed to make it. They've made the last 2 World Finals, even when we thought there was no chance in hell they win Worlds last year.
And I'll throw this out for you. All the people doing that thing, I don't believe this, Monty, but I'm going to use their whack logic against them. The last few years, they've been going like, well, Faker never loses in best of 5 to the LPL. Well, shame he's playing the LCK then, isn't it, dickhead? Let's pull up the LCK record at Worlds, shall we? Oh, is that right? Are people beating him all the time? Is it DRX? Is it fucking damn one? Is it? Yeah, exactly. So your own logic plays against you. Now, I don't believe in it. Like, I'm not superstitious like that, but you are. So you take that and put that in your pipe and smoke it, sir.
Yeah. I mean, T1 can win for sure. Like, I think if you see the T1, the same teams that we saw in the quarterfinals, but I just don't, I think, I think it was a bad day for GenG.
Here's why I don't think they win, Monty. I'll actually give you some real analysis, because I actually do think, as you said earlier, if you think about the way the top esports series worked, if you think about when they played that one game against BLG, the problem these other teams had was they basically let T1 be the one who decided if there was a fight, if this objective had to be fought, etc. If there's one team I can actually trust, Monty, to not fight against T1 when they don't have to and you can just win in any way you scale, it is fucking GenG, bro. Like, they are the team I can trust when Chovy will just go into a side lane, where they will just go, but we don't even need to take this particular objective. We can give it to them. Like, I think they are the one I can trust to do it. So I think they will play responsibly, and they will just win.
And it really is just also a draft issue, because
you have a lot of meta
champions are just in GenG's favor. Like, if you can't play the Yone well or as effectively, if you can't play the Aurora well or as effectively, I'm pretty sure they can play Skarner, so I'm not worried about that one. But if you can't play the Ezreal, if you can't play the Kai'Sa, this means that if you have to start banning these champions, Keen gets Cassante.
I'll give you an example.
He can just play Cassante into anything. So what are you going to do?
Here's how fans think. There's actually a banger comment in a thread on Reddit. I got this saved for you, because it's a guy where this is pure copium, because it sounds like he's countered the idea Gumayushi has championship problems, right? Because look, he goes, Guma is good at Kalista, Caitlyn, Kog'Maw, Varus, Jinx, Xayah, Misfortune, Neela, Jhin, Draven, and Ashe. And then he puts hyphen, is that not enough? Are you ready? I'm going to answer you live. Not in a meta where you can pick Ezreal, fucking Kai'Sa, and Zeri, you fucking idiot. Like, what you've just done there that's so stupid is you picked a role, ADC, that's always about being good on like 3 of the 4 meta champions, and you've just listed loads of other champions that we aren't playing as the meta champions. So you're right, if this was like a game where it's like mid lane, you play whatever, yeah, that would be great. But right now, actually, to not be good on all the super strong ones is going to limit the draft, of course.
Well, it's also that if you want to play Kalista, you have to ban Ashe.
There you go.
So that's an issue in its own right. And then Also, like, I think we may, to be fair, I think we may see some more Varus, and we already saw the Caitlyn. So I think he does
The
have
Caitlyn,
some.
if it is available as an angle, always will be a win if you can get them. That's one of the best possible draws. But a lot of teams are going to surely be looking for that as well.
Well, right. And even, I would say, even like Caitlyn and Varus are going to be vulnerable to some of the things that GenG has shown. Like, they didn't pull out the Nocturne again, but like, they are really good at running that Nocturne, Ahri, like Twitch or Callista bullshit. And this is a team that they intimately know each other, right? They intimately know each other, but I don't think that, there is, maybe T1 has some super secret picks that are going to define the meta from the semifinals forward that they're going to deploy against GenG. But I think you would have to be crazy to look at the current meta of the game and the priority picks and say that T1 has an advantage. They don't. It's a better meta than Summer, but it still is not really ideal at either AD or mid for this team. That's it. And it's just better for GenG. And there's not really an argument that you can make that is true. Like, GenG, I mean, maybe T1 can play Aurora well, but like, at least I've seen Keen play it, right? I assume Chovy can play it. Like, Faker.
I would like to see that busted out, actually. I want to see the Chovy Aurora.
Yeah, like, Faker's played it, but again, it's like he's played Yone too, right? He's played Yone too, and his one Aurora game was before the Aurora was actually banned on the patch. It was at the end of LCK Summer, so it was even before playoffs. He played it versus Nongshim, and he lost. And then we haven't seen it appear since that time. Because it was banned, right? Because it was removed, but it was there for the start of playoffs, and he didn't play it then. So I don't know. Like, I have a lot of questions about what they can actually pivot to. And at Worlds, he's pulled out the Nico. He did win with Yone, but it was versus Pain Gaming, and when he's played Yone in Korea, it did not look great, even when he was winning games. And then otherwise, he's played Ahri and Silas and Galio. Does he need more than that? Maybe not. But I do think that versus an opponent like GenG and versus an opponent like Chovy, Chovy's going to have answers. Like,
Listen, guys, I've got the bad news. I have, not through any like actual real world means, that doesn't exist. I would never make that allegation, but through accessing the Akashic record, which is outside of time and space, I already know what happens. Both series and the final are 3-1s. It's 3-1 GenG wins, 3-1 BLG, and then in the final, GenG wins 3-1. And I told you, it's actually boring from here on out. You saw the best series from GenG already. That was the FlyQuest one. That was the one where they gave you the entertainment, the excitement. That was the one where the match went all the distance. It's gonna be some standard claps from here on out. It's all good. It's just gonna be claps all the way. 3-1, 3-1, 3-1. Come back and I will be the prophet.
I mean, if T1 wins another Worlds, it will be really amazing. I will say that. Like, if they get back to back it, that will be very impressive.
They've got 2 best-of-5 series to win still, money. So I'm not going to get onto that train. I'm not even going to enter that narrative train until at least they make the final, mate. I think they're going to get. I think they might, like I said, 3-1. They could even get 3-0 by GenG. That's plausible. I know people are thinking, no, but they can't. But GenG lost. Like, we'll see. I think there's so many different factors. Draft, like we're saying, head-to-head. There's so many.
It's also weird shit happens always in these international tournaments when you see teams from the same regions.
Oh, like, sure.
They just know each other so much better that things can get a lot stompier a lot of the time. And they sometimes teams revert to like regional metas. I mean, we've seen this a million times with the LPL where they like don't play a bunch of champions that they play domestically. Then they hit each other. Then all the weird picks come out and then they go away again once they're done beating up on each other. Right. And they get sometimes in the past with LPL, they've kind of gotten drawn into like the constant skirmish style when they weren't playing that way. They don't do that anymore, but this is just historically. I'm just saying, by the way, the interregional matches produce weird results a lot of the time.
Even though, if you actually listen, my real opinion was earlier. It's about styles make fights. It's about the matchups, about what did FlyQuest do in draft. If GenG 3-0s T1, absolutely, you can all do the tweet. Is FlyQuest better than T1? Now, look, it's an egregious, fucked up angle. You're being incredibly cynical if you do it. But if you want to be a dickhead, that is right there. I might even do it myself. I can't lie. We'll see how I feel on the day. It's all good. See how much I want to give the hurt to the fans of T1. We'll see.
What are the fans of T1 going to do when this roster inevitably doesn't all stick together next year?
I mean, it can't surely. I mean, like you
No.
said, the money wise, they've had their run already. Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
Faker's
that's
the
the
only
other
one
problem.
contracted next year, so I think many of them will have more lucrative offers from other places. Also, I think like
By
if
the
they
way, like I
don't win
said, I'll be
again, it's
very
kind of
interested to
run
see
its
where they
course.
go.
Yeah.
I want to see where they go as well. I'd be interested to see where these other players end up going. There's a lot of different spots that'll be quite interesting at this point in time, right?
Yeah.
And who does T1 get? That's actually one of the most interesting off seasons ever for LCK in that regard.
Yeah, because they did already the like rookie reset around Faker, and I don't think that they have the talent to do that again. So I do think it'll be very hard. All right, you want to do a limited amount of viewer questions,
Yeah.
Thorin? All right, so we're gonna take a quick break, guys, and then we'll be back with some viewer questions. See you next second.
It is the final segment of the show, which is, of course, titled Viewer Questions. Now, while we do appreciate everyone who subscribes to our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Insight Esports, that is not what generates the ability to ask questions. That is instead a perk reserved for Discord subscribers. So if you subscribe to the Last Free Nation Discord, then there is a channel where you can ask questions here. By the way, as an aside, this will be used in a forthcoming episode. We obviously do the show Hot Take Point Made in League of Legends. You also, if you subscribe, will have access to a channel to submit your own hot takes, and the really crazy ones we might use on the league show and see like roast fan ones, or maybe you'll make a good one.
Yeah.
So anyway, everyone who subscribes can ask questions now, which Monty will pick among. Obviously, we've got limited time on this one. It's more on the other episodes where there's less going on that we'll have time to go through. We had like 4 best of 5s to go through today, guys.
And
a
the
whole bunch of
Riot
things from
nonsense
Reddit. Yes.
and the other stuff. Oh, guys, we are going to be doing
Yes.
SI throughout the off season, so I
Yeah.
promise you we will do. We
Yeah.
frequently do all of your questions. We will get back to that.
Yes.
And as I said, if you guys have ideas for off-season shows for us, please ask them there, because you've had good ideas in the past. Now is the time to remind us of your good ideas, because if you've got good ones, we've got time during the off season to maybe do, a show that features 1 or 2 of those at length. So we will also, for Discord subscribers, we will be figuring out even better rewards for you. Now, whether it'll be Discord subscription still or Patreon, I don't know. We're going to sit down and have a conversation about how we can better actually give you more shit. Because we really do appreciate it, and like we need to sort that out for ourselves. So we anticipate more value in the future, but we do appreciate your support. What are your thoughts on Don Jake's interviews? Have you seen these? They're pretty funny.
Well, here's the thing. I've technically done one. It just never ever got released. So,
oh shit.
The problem, it's never coming out, mate. I did it in like the fucking spring. So if he hasn't released it by now, I think that's pretty much just dead in the vault / here's, you know what? I'll even say it. I think there's a real chance, even though I actually know him, but he clearly this isn't the case. I think there's a real chance. I think he just had tech problems and it didn't record or something. He's just too ashamed to fucking say it. Because some people are just like that, mate. Because the thing is, it was like a 2.5 hour interview or something, man. So what I'll say is this. I think compared to what is out there in League, they are good, inarguably, in the sense that they're not at all like other people's interviews. So like, even though, by the way, I'm not really a fan of sort of the Nardwuar style. I think it's a little bit cheesy. There are a lot of generic, boring interviews in League that just cover the basics or cover the draft and things like that. The problem I have is this, Monty, and this is a very idiosyncratic way to look at it. But while I think they are good, they do also, and I know this guy, I've told him this to his face, they do also come off, Monty, and you and I were like this as people. Some would argue maybe we still are, but I don't. I think we should. Which is, when you're young and you are intelligent and well-read, it's very hard not to constantly flex it, because you want it to be your identity. You want everything to be that you have some ultra, reference and something and some philosophical thing. And which is like, the problem is when you're actually like when you become a master, you just sort of, it's like being a sage guy. You're not so eager. You know that the gems will come when they come, and there's moments where you don't have to flex that. So I would say they're good. I think they have value. I don't watch them all. It's probably usually more if I think it's like an interesting player or there's some funny angle. One thing I will just put out there that I thought was a bit wild was, please just be very, very careful though what you implicate Koreans in, please. Because I saw that one, Monty, where if the gag was he got Owner from T1 to do this symbol, which Albanian nationalists do, by the way, right? In that scenario, if you don't know, guys, about what the country Albania and it's like ethnic resentments and problems right there, I would just say I don't think a Korean knows what he's getting involved with when you tell him that's funny and to do that, so I would just say, I doubt there will actually be an issue. It's just bloody a Korean league player. I don't know if he's ever
Yeah.
going to our bit. But that's just the sort of thing where I get a bit nervous. You know what I mean?
hear
Like
you.
it's a bit like that thing. Here's a safer reference. You know when Korean players would go to LCS teams and everyone in the LCS always thought it was funny to teach them to swear. But the problem is, Monty, because they don't know the cultural context, they sometimes will swear in like a really inappropriate moment and be like, "Lol, she is bitch." It's like, bro, that's just some shit you said privately, and like so I get scared whenever that happens. But aside from that, I think they're interesting. He's got an interesting funny angle.
Yeah, look, it feels fresh, and like the sense of humor may not be my own a lot of the time, but I recognize that a lot of people enjoy that, and so I think it's good for the scene. Like I think it definitely adds spice. It's a welcome addition.
He's definitely he's also drawn way more out of these players than you normally get. Like the Korea ones, especially, have been unlocked in a way you haven't seen in Worlds interviews before.
Yeah.
And also, I give him automatic free bonus points for just asking the questions, text notes he wants to ask, not just saying on Twitter, "What do you want me to ask, guys?" So he doesn't basically play Twitter interviews a player. So a little bit of a shot across the bow there, some would say, but that's how my style is. Don't worry about it.
Denis Villeneuve famously stated that he despised dialogue in films. Did he? I was unaware. Is it any surprise that his best films, Prisoners, Enemy, Sicario, Arrival, and Blade Runner 2049, are all written by other people? Would Dune have turned out better if he wasn't involved in the writing process? I have no idea.
Oh, he actually wrote the screenplay, did he?
He was probably involved. I don't think he wrote it. But.
Okay. It's an interesting angle.
Yeah, it is.
I've actually never tried to think, why is he good at one and not the other? I will say, I have a more cynical take, which is, I mean, it sounds fucked up, but it almost seems like he's actually one of those people that's better when you don't give him the infinite budget. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It almost feels like it's better if you give him the limited budget, and then he'll make way more of it, if you know what I mean, in that sense.
Right.
It's an interesting observation. I haven't thought about it.
Do you think that there were any seasons where NA was a stronger region than EU? No. A lot of people would mention 2014. No. 2016, no. 2022 and 2023, also no and no.
I would say they were comparable these seasons, but they weren't like significantly stronger or whatever. They were just like comparable, maybe.
Right. If not, when was NA the closest?
Oh, I mean, spoiler, you do notice as well. Here's the bomber if you're the NA fan there, right? If I say which seasons was EU the best in, well, EU's like winning MSI, going to World's Final. Essentially, all the seasons you picked where NA could have been better was just the worst ever seasons for EU ever in history. That's the only ones you get.
Like,
so
we're also ignoring the fact that EU's peaks have been much higher, both in terms of making back-to-back World Finals, having 2 teams in semifinals in 2015. Yep. Like, there have been way more peaks for Europe overall.
For sure.
Who do you think is the biggest check stealer of all time?
Well, here's the problem. He means in League, because in Counter-Strike, I can tell you right now, it's going to hurt everyone's feelings, but I said it already. It's Fallen. If you don't know, bro, Fallen hasn't actually been good. I'm not trolling for something mad, Monty, like 5 years at this point. As in, like, he's just a mid player. But I can tell you, he's had not only crazy salaries, the buyouts alone have been like $700,000 and stuff. So I can't even consider, because he still plays now. If people don't know Fury, it's just still like a top 15 team or something. So it's bonkers. In League, I'm trying to think who it would be. Because I will just say this. There's 2 ways I can go. It's just like the overrated comment. You can either do check steal that is good, but they just get way too much money. You can do that, or you can do the one who's bad, and it's like, how do they even play? Like, spoiler, by pure definition, it's got to be Hooney in the sense of the big one, right? Because he got the millions, Monty. The problem is, if I want to pick the small one, I don't even know to this day how Ayla ever got a check in League of Legends, but he still does. This guy is insane, bro. As far as I can tell, like his main strength, like I'll give you a quick joke. I think I even made this joke before, like that one of those episodes of 4Player, right? If you look famously at the life of occultists, right, Monty? Famously, I'll give you an example like Aleister Crowley or something. If someone says, well, he's saying he's summoning demon princes and, making pacts, but in the real world, you don't know if that's true. Right? You just know he says that, and in his mind, he thought it happened, right? But inarguably, if you were to say, what power did Aleister Crowley have? It's like the character in The Master. His power was to trick loads of people who had wealth and money and status to give him all those things. He somehow got them to willingly hand over their chest, their wife, their arse, everything to just whatever he wanted to do with it. So in a similar way, Isla, I don't know if he even can play support if he can lane, if he can shot call. I don't know if he can do anything, but I'll tell you what, Monty. You put him in a room and he just fucking he's like that character in The Cure. He must just talk to them and go, I'm not even hit. What, you are not playing well in lane. And then at the end they're like, oh, I guess it's me that's the problem. And so it just stays in all these teams for years. He's had like 3 or 4. They were trying to put him in Team Liquid, bro, when they thought fucking Core JJ was going.
Plus
They were going to put this guy in Team Liquid.
Plus, he's just Vulcan's kryptonite for whatever reason.
Oh, I know all of that one too. That's like the Thorin beat Zay's shit, isn't it? Doesn't even make sense, mate. It doesn't make any sense on paper at all. He's got to be up there. Hooney's pretty good too. That's a good one. Because remember, on paper, I'm going to just say tentatively, Hooney might have made like $6 million salary in his career. So something bonkers like that. Whereas, like, if you don't know, guys, that's probably like twice what Cap's ever made in his entire career. You know what I mean? Like something insane like that.
Hooney also simultaneously was the biggest check stealer, but also the best agent in League of Legends history. So.
Definitely. He was insane, mate. He used to come in and go, oh, what, you working with the old, what's that, the old Impact 900? You would upgrade to a Hooney 1000. Yeah, listen, you got to put an extra 0 at the end of the check, but come on, what could go wrong?
I would love to have been a fly on the wall in those rooms, Thorin, because like he refused an agent, did all the negotiations himself, so he didn't even have to pay an agent, and then got ridiculous deals. Like, what the fuck? That guy's a god. He should be an agent for other players.
Remember, most players would be terrible as agents. What is it, again? What is this guy doing? Like, I agree, Monty. He must have some secret
level,
tech.
man.
Is he really just going like holla 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 holla, and then they just like write all the zeros on the check? Like, what is going on? It doesn't even make sense at all. It doesn't even make sense. None of it.
Which Australian talent member are you picking to do a show with Thorin and Curie in order to break the speedrun record for YouTube demonetization?
Oh, because of the certain word with C.
Yes.
By the way, I did
C
actually
word.
see just a random hilarious one like that, where it was like, I think this might even have been real, because I could believe a kid would do this. A daughter had drawn a little picture for her dad, Monty, and it was like a beautiful picture of, summer's day. And then she'd written, because remember, little kids can't always spell Monty. She'd written that word, and then he goes, and she goes, see you next time. C-U-N-T. It's like... So who would, is there even any Australians in league? There's only Atlas, and he doesn't say that word. He's too polite, mate. He wouldn't even say it anyway. Is there any
Aussies? It could be
that
an Australian in any esport. I mean, Uber's probably up there.
I'll tell you right now, he wouldn't do it on camera because he's a pro. But I guarantee you, if you get me Spawn, who I know enjoys whiskey, and me and him drink whiskey, I bet he'd say that.
I've heard him say it. I've heard him say it a million times.
Definitely. So you got, if we could put him on, and it's sort of like Flashpoint, where we're at like the blind spot, which was our bar we had at the end of the day. I could get him to say that.
Also,
me and him and Kira would have to say yes. Demonetize the whole video.
Sponge also 100%.
Sure.
Uber would do it too. If you were doing a show with him, I don't think he cares. As elitists, I'm curious to hear your thoughts on this hot take. The idea that we must accept the constant evolution of language is absurd. Hold on, where's this going?
Okay.
Language, in my view, should be tightly regulated by experts and made to follow logical rules.
Okay.
Oh, no, man. That's part of the fun of language, is how people come up with new jokes and, memes. Like, where would we be without memes? We don't want a highly regulated language.
Also, by the way, technically, I don't think that even really works. Like, look, I sort of know what he means in the sense that, like, maybe languages get dumbed down. But if you think about it, nearly all the change also does in the modern day, Monty. Like in English, for example, it comes from like working class people. It's actually that's where all the regional accents come up with all these weird terms and slang and all the rest of it. Like,
oh yeah, it's fun.
And so I don't think he's realizing you wouldn't really get like a new Shakespeare that could like give you regulations on what the new language. It has to come.
Also,
from, like,
if we had that, we wouldn't have even literally had Shakespeare, who invented a bazillion words.
I baited you on that one, Monty, because obviously you, like a pleb, believe Shakespeare was just, the son of whatever, like a fucking baker or whatever they claim he was. I, on the other hand, know it was like secretly Francis Bacon or some Illuminati, exactly, level thinkers who were obviously fucking with everyone.
I will say, Thorin, if Shakespeare was actually a group of people, it would make a lot more sense than Shakespeare actually being Shakespeare. Because it's almost impossible that he's as good as he is.
If you ever look into that one, I do sort of low-key think that's some conspiracy shit. It's all good. And that's more safe. Notice, Monty, on that one, you don't get in trouble. Like, if I say things about the world and politics, but if I just go, that guy wrote those things, I think it's probably just some rich guy secretly pretending. They go, okay, it's all right, no problem. We don't cancel you for that. Don't get cancelled.
Yeah, you should just. I agree, Thorin. You should just stick to Elizabethan conspiracies.
Yeah. If you just do that, you get
you got
problem,
any
right?
about Elizabeth the First while you're at it?
Yeah, I'll tell you. There is actually a very real one, which is that when she had that magician, John D, her court
Yeah,
advisor.
John D is a baller, man.
One of the genius things he did for real, even though this is actually nonsense, Monty, is he claimed that there was a historic. Because one of the things in history a lot of people might not understand is the reason why when people hear concepts like manifest destiny, they think that's just nonsense, isn't it? No, it's actually about the idea that your ideology has to be that you're justified. In fact, this is almost fate that you do the thing you want to do anyway, like colonial endeavors, right? So what this guy did, Monty, that was genius, was he said before, obviously there was a British Empire when it was Elizabeth who was the one who started all that shit. He basically said to her, there's actually an ancient historical precedent that claims that King Arthur went to the New World. So that means it's technically our right to go there because he already went there and claimed it. And that was part of the reason.
Is that part of like the Albion, like he traveled to Albion logic?
And so what they essentially did was use that as an impetus to imply, like, it's our right to go. It was like a clever intellectual impetus as to why it would be okay to have the empire and stuff like that. And he actually also, by the way, came up with the term the British Empire. So he's a pretty interesting guy. So there you go.
There's one is actually very interesting. He was like the spy master for Elizabeth. Yes. Yeah, super interesting guy. Do you have a LoL equivalent to the career of Yakindar?
Ooh, that'd be hard. Basically, this is a player who came along who was like a very, very skilled, like aggressive player. But then he was a bit too arrogant. His game kind of tanked a bit later. And if anything, he probably ints more than he sort of carries that. That's actually not too dissimilar to someone like a Whippo, potentially. Like, by the way, here's what's sad about Whippo. I actually don't even think it was like, I've never been one of those haters. I always thought like his first couple of years were really good. First, like probably 2 years were really good. Then it was just diminishing returns every few years. Because I do feel like, unfortunately, it is hubris that got to these people. They always thought they could be like, not just the best Monty, but like the game changer who can violate every rule that exists. And they don't exist for me because I'm different and I'm unique in the exception. And sadly, what you tend to find is there are very few exceptions in league. So maybe someone like him.
This is an interesting question. If T1 somehow wins Worlds, do they get salary cap relief because of that LCK salary cap rule about winning 3 international tournaments? Would the EWC count for that? Because if it does,
count as a Riot one though, surely.
I don't think it does, but I will ask actually.
You know what I mean?
Because that would actually be bullshit.
Surely that's the Riot circuit. You would.
Yeah, it would actually be bullshit if EWC did count for salary cap relief for T1 if they win Worlds, and that would be their 3rd international win. That would be pretty fucked up. So.
Also, by the way, as I did point out on Twitter, technically, if you want it, you know how I did that thing to FlyQuest, Monty, where when FlyQuest won, well, almost won against GenG, I just posted that technically that's just a win for EU as well, because you got Whippo inspired, and then you've got Mithy and Nuke Duck, so actually the majority of the squad's just European anyway. By the same logic, technically, all LCK Worlds wins do go to America, because without the United States of America money, there might not be a South Korea to win all those Worlds. So technically, you guys did actually sponsor all LCK wins. Damwon, T1, Samsung. None of them would be possible. Here's the thing. Spoiler, I don't think it's a controversial statement. I don't think North Korea would win many Worlds. So there you go. I think LCK should be thankful for all their Worlds wins to the United States of America and that massive military base in Seoul right next to 81.
It's not there anymore. They moved it.
Oh, really? Holy shit.
Yeah, they moved it south of Seoul now. It's gone.
Okay. Now I can go to a bar there without someone just looking at me like maybe they're going to kick my head in if I speak in American accent. Which luckily I don't, so I'm all good.
Does Elephant get more views on YouTube or Spotify? Can you disclose the ratio? I mean, sure. So I don't know any esports podcast where YouTube is not the main driver of viewership. It's just our audience cares about video, and like now we're on video on Spotify, obviously, but that didn't happen previously, and not everybody's on video on Spotify. So YouTube is actually just the main vector of all esports podcasts. I would say probably like 10 to 20% of our viewers come from various podcast platforms. It's definitely like mostly Twitch and YouTube is where people watch it. And like mostly YouTube. I mean, even our live has gone like probably, we still broadcast on Twitch, but our YouTube viewership is usually like 5-6x what our Twitch viewership is right now. So okay. It's much, much bigger on YouTube, even the live stuff these days. Have you either of you gotten around to watching Villeneuve's Incendies? I haven't seen it. You have, though, I believe.
I've seen all his films, yeah. I think it's good. I do. Here's the problem. I would say it only gets a bit overrated because people do that thing where, because it's like the least famous of his like modern films, basically the first really good one he made. I think people just do that hipster thing where like, well, I prefer that one because they know you haven't seen it and they can sort of see. But it's, I think I still think Prisoners is his best film.
Yeah, Prisoners is very good. You have a friend that is interested in watching one of the 3 following movies that night. Face Off, Batman Returns, 500 Days of Summer. Which one do you recommend? I mean, it's easily Face Off. It's easily Face Off.
Here's what's weird. You can tell he must hate Face Off because what's weird is we hated those other 2 films. Face Off.
Richard hated Face Off.
You've got the wrong people. Like, you made that one. You just done that thing there for real when you were like, which would you like to do? Have a really nice Philly cheesesteak, a pile of dog shit, or your own vomit? It's like, I think I'll take the Philly. Like, what? What? Okay.
Face Off isn't a masterpiece, but Face Off is at least entertaining, unlike those other 2 movies.
What was the second film? What was the second one in the list?
Batman Returns.
By the way, this is a statement right now. I would rewatch Batman Returns 3 times rather than watch 500 Days of Summer one more time ever in my life. You know what I mean? There was like moments in Batman Returns I thought were all right. 500 Days of Summer was even suffering rewatching it, bro. Was like, I don't ever want to see that film ever in my life again. Ever again. I'm never going to do it, mate. Never going to do it.
I still think we should do the content piece, which is 500 Days of Summer with Richard, where we force him to watch it for 500 straight days. That's the real content the people demand. What was your favorite foreplay episode so far? I don't know. I mean, I've liked a bunch of them.
Well, I mean, just for purely self-indulgent reasons, I did think the episode of Revolver was good because Monty came in like, haha, we're going to wreck him, right, Rich? And then I like sort of like low-key mildly won Richard over, and it was tilting Monty even more because he was like, "No, this
terrible movie."
By the way, I actually think technically it's the 2 foreplay episodes that were the ones where me and Richard did our shit because Monty also was bad triggered by the werewolf movie. Which I didn't think it was good, Monty, but it wasn't that bad, so I can tell it was just tilting you so hard.
I appreciate
it. No, copium, it's good. It's not bad, Monty. Like, I love it.
Richard's copium was fucking insane.
By the way, he's right about that as well. We were even doing that joke the whole time at this CS event. Almost every form of media is better with a werewolf break. You just put that in there,
what I appreciate about that selection, though, is now every single of our YouTube videos, now everybody's just asking, but would this movie be better with the werewolf break? So I love the meme. It was worth it for the meme. The meme is very funny. Yes. The movie.
I just love that much you were melted over that episode particularly. That was a good one. That was good.
I don't know. Like I feel as though we got the Villeneuve arc. I thought was really good. Maybe the Prisoners episode I thought was really fun to talk about all the theories and stuff.
I actually think there are some that we just all did a really good job on. Like I think if you watch like the Chinatown one, maybe, or what do you call it? Dog Day Afternoon, The Godfather. I think these are what Casablanca. Didn't we kill all these ones? I think we all did a really great job, like waxing lyrical on the good things about these films too. They're not all just mean ones. Heat, I'm sure Heat one was mega if you're a fan of that.
Honestly, I think the show is just so good. It's like I always enjoy making that content. So I don't know if I think there's one that's been the best. I think it's the quality of that show has just been very high overall. So. And many of you think it's our best podcast now on LFN. So thank you for checking it out. We didn't get to all the questions today, but we are going to have to call it there because it's like midnight my time, and I have small children that will wake up in the morning. So, and we're also at over 3 hours. We'll be back next week, obviously, to discuss semifinals and preview finals, and probably we'll have a lot more time to take questions this next week unless Riot decides to fire a bunch of people again. You never know. You never know with Riot Games. Probably more roster rumors, everything like that. Again, please submit ideas for off-season content. We will take those very seriously as we look to fill up the off-season. If you guys want certain guests or something, it is easier for us to schedule that during the off-season because we're not like locked to specific days like we are in the regular season, and also me being in Asia complicates things pretty significantly, so with time zones, particularly if we're trying to get people from NA as well. So anyway, we will figure that out for you guys, but we will see you next week. Till then.